Hello and welcome back to Week in Review with the one and only Doovid. I see I didn't get to it fast enough, and I think the audio might have started playing over itself for a bit. So sorry about that if that was the case. But I have paused the stream now, so it should just be us coming through. Great to be here. We've got Doovid with us tonight. Looking forward to another great show where we'll be talking about current events as they relate to our research in whatever the hell we feel like this week. So thanks for being here with us, everyone, and looking forward to reading your comments. Take it away, Doovid.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Great to be back. Thanks for doing this as always. Just to mention, today is the Jewish Purim celebration, the book of Esther, the full moon before the full moon of Passover. And it's actually also Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, Gaur Panima. And people familiar with the Jewish rituals, there's a fast day. So the day before Purim, Tinus Esther. And so I was at least doing a liquid fast today. So I waited to eat and then I read the book of Esther. And that's why we started a few minutes later. But here we are. Happy Purim, happy Gaur Panima to everybody. And let's get to Week in Review. So I don't have that many links. I didn't prepare that much, although I have my essay on chess. And I made some revisions on my lineage, high birth, low birth essay, but maybe not enough to go over. Maybe Jennifer has a little essay to go over. So Yannick Klitcher put out another video or two. Nothing that much. This is related, semi-peripheral to Chat B3, Chat PT3, but it was a little different about general language modeling and foundations. So it wasn't particularly interesting, but at least he put out a video. Some of his other videos on Chat PT3 were probably some of the best out there, but just random. Here's a video on Kant and the Jews. It wasn't actually that interesting, and I'm not sure if it was in Spanish. Part of it, the Q&A and the discussion, and even though it was mostly him just reading a paper, so it wasn't all that interesting. But we've been talking about neo-Kantianism, and Kant's relation with the Jews is a peripheral topic. I think we've talked about it before, where
I
Kant's,
don't recall that particular topic.
I've talked about it on Luke Ford and other shows, but Kant had lost in a essay rating contest to Moshe Mendelssohn, of the same time period. They were contemporaries and knew each other. Kant was still in the Christian era, but was a biblical criticist. He had criticisms of Judaism, mainly in the realm of truth, where he held that Judaism had a utilitarian view towards truth. So that's a topic I've discussed on Luke Ford at length in multiple streams. But neo-Kantianism is a topic that I will be returning to. I'm not sure I have anything tonight on neo-Kantianism. This week at the Royal Institute, building the universe with mathematics, and a man who was educated in India and the United States with interesting kind of like Neoplatonism and metaphysics. So semi-interesting. Here I was actually searching for Fernand Gobet just to see if there's anything new on chunking theory. The probably a world-renowned expert on chunking theory. And so I guess there was a conference on Lakatos, who is Imre Lakatos, who's one of a contemporary of Popper and one of the major names in the philosophy of science. So I didn't have a chance this whole like 25 lectures. So I didn't have a chance to look at any of them, but I figure I'll share that. I'll probably hopefully have a chance to. Definitely, there's 2 lectures that include Fernand Gobet, uh, but maybe I'll even watch all of them. Um, this wasn't that particularly interesting, but it was on AI and chess and an overview of the history, and obviously, my essays and I have an essay on chess this week, but chess is one of the precursor main subjects of machine learning and artificial intelligence. That I mentioned in my essay on decision trees. The Alan Turing had wrote a chess program before there even were computers, and one of the very first programs programmed into the computer was chess. And even Chat GP3 is basically an advancement on mostly algorithms that were tested in chess, although other fields, but chess still remains one of the main testing grounds for machine learning. Jennifer shared this video with me, and so she was going to cover it in her week in review. Tech Lead, which we've talked about in the past a few times, his criticisms of Lex Friedman, but here he's like why he stopped helping people as a millionaire, and basically saying that like people are weak and they need to be pushed and helping, like kind of like basic Republican type principles. I mean, some of his principles were reasonable. You don't want to be taken advantage of, or like you could create an entourage simply by financing people to be in your entourage. And there are some people who discussed with Luke Ford, where money can't really. There's certain people that train themselves to, so to say, kiss the ass of rich people, but I mean, and to some extent, you could, everybody will be motivated, and we've discussed that in the past a few times. Some even, God forbid, relation to Jeffrey Epstein, that you could influence and get people to do certain things based on money. Um, but the nature is, if you start seeing success, should you use that money to help people? And generally, Doovid is in favor of helping people, and a lot of times, the straightforward best way to help people is money. But there's the flip side in causing dependency, and kind of like old school conservative economic policy. You're the one who shared that video. I'm not sure if you had some special reason.
Well, you said I should tell you or I should keep a list of the videos that I watched so that I can show them on the show. And this was a video that I happened to watch, and I thought it was interesting because it's kind of talking about something that I don't know if people really talk about this very much, which I guess is the value proposition of friendship. So it's, I guess, interesting to see. I mean, it happens probably a lot. It is probably cliche for people who are helpful to get taken advantage of. But then I was
Well, I've
wondering, like,
discussed this in the past many times. I mean, even Luke Ford, because the Jewish dictum, says, "Buy yourself a friend," and to some extent, well, you get a friend by giving from yourself for them, and that doesn't directly have to be money. It could be doing favors or helping, but many times it's money, and so the straight way that you prove your friendship by taking of yourself and being altruistic, and money is one of the quintessential. I mean, it could also be time consumption, some form of altruism to demonstrate the friendship. And what I meant for your week in review, that like I do, that you would just go over a whole bunch of videos and give a little like what it was about, why you found it interesting, why other people might find it interesting. And I've mentioned many times that you bring yourself and your resources to a friendship. So if one person's popular and one person's unpopular, one person has money. So like a lot of friendships um, I have always treated. The other person has never treated me because I had more finances, and the person was always tight on money. So I mean, occasionally they paid for themselves, but they never treated me. I always treated them, and I never expected them to treat me because I knew the financial situation was of that manner. Um, and that could be across the board, related to resources, related to like if you got an apartment and house, okay, we always hang out at my place. um, I was in New York, some different situations or times, um, you got to hang out at one place or another. And so if one guy doesn't have a place or a situation for the people to hang out by them, it's not expected. And I mean, it's not even feasible. Sometimes also like people have less resources. um, God forbid, like in New York, you could get into like drug usage, like risking the legal repercussions of carrying the drugs or something like that, of the person. Well, like I'm paying, I'm doing all this, so like you carry the drugs, or kind of like schlepping, the more menial tasks that you could try to put to the person that it was like, well, I'm doing all this. And I've mentioned countless times my old roommate day trading that would guilt you into doing something. And he was pretty generous, who would regularly buy food for everybody, um, sponsor things. We lived together, and he paid a bigger bulk of the rent. But occasionally, when something came up and he wanted a favor for you, he all of a sudden remembered every single thing that he'd ever done to you, and would give you the list of like, oh my God, I can't believe you're not willing to do this for me. That time I bought you dinner, that time I bought you lunch, the time I gave you a ride, the time I lent you bit $10, the time like all these times I let you smoke my weed, or various things. And so he always had that on the back of his mind, even though generally he was jealous. I mean, not jealous, generous, that the few times where he wanted you to do something, like he would guilt you, and like it would be apparent that he remembered every single time he did something for you. And it may not, could just be he was had a good memory, or there could be some explanation, but there is that element where I would say that if you're more successful than your friends, it should demonstrate in that, like your family. Um, like if you're going out to eat with your family and you have more money than the other members of your family, might be reasonable to pick up the tab, or your friends, or various things, because saying if having extra money is what you're bringing to the table. Um, and that doesn't just apply to money. Like that could be like the brain brawn, so to say. Like okay, like I had a few friendships, especially when I was younger, before I like started working out and did MMA, where I was the brain and they were the brawn. Like I let them copy off my homework, and tutored them in math and physics, and then they like stuck up for me and made sure I didn't get picked on or bullied. And like I had relations really till I was probably about 25 years old, and started seriously working out or studying the art of violence to be able to stick up for myself. But all through my uh, school career, like so, there's that type relationship where you'd be like, okay, you're big and strong, so obviously, like you got to stick up for me, and like I'm smart and brainy, so like yeah, like I'll help you out with your math homework, and because that's the trade off of friendship. And goes back to the high birth, low birth. So if you took high birth and you were always used to having more money than other people, and it's always relative. Like say, there's people who took higher birth, but if you took high birth and you always were used to having more money than other people from youth, and knew the dynamic that like okay, not everyone gets to do what you do. Like not everybody has enough money to go out to eat every day. Not everybody has tickets to the stadium, or has their own car at 16, or these various things, that you learn that from birth to acquired wealth in your adulthood, to say like, well, nah, I didn't have money growing up. Like I became wealthy later, and it doesn't necessarily change the dynamic, but maybe this man here seemed to be someone who acquired money later in his life, so he didn't take high birth and wasn't necessarily used to the dynamic from a young age. So,
It
you know,
sounds like, yeah, he worked at Facebook and Google, possibly. I just love his deadpan, hilarious high tea style, I guess. I just can't stay away from it. But yeah, my point on it was that I thought people might find it highly comedic indeed to check this video out. And I think
with
there's even another one since. Is this oh, I thought maybe it was the one where she, which I just happened to catch, flusteredly had no clue how to address possibly the problem of the criterion or something along those lines. It was quite funny to watch Claire try to talk about anything in logic that wasn't valid versus sound distinction. Anyway, go ahead. Oh, I see you are on a show.
you recognize this Baba Yaga guy?
That name sounds familiar. Uh, which one is he?
Well, he was just super chatting. Baba Yaga obviously is like the bad guy in a lot of fairy tales. Like Baba Yaga is I think refers to like the old witch type in Hungarian tales, who's a lot of times like I'm not sure if that's the origin of the name Baba Yaga. Like when you did your debate on Ghost and we went over and prepared the Grimm's fairy tales, but I think in a lot of those fairy tales, Baba Yaga is actually like the old witch character. Uh, Although it might have other names, but I'm talking like someone that appears in chats on your type channels and super chats. He wasn't on the program, just someone super chatting. So I popped onto Defense Politics Asia for another um, open panel discussion. So thank God Wyatt, I had reached out to him when he had first started out, and you had him on my channel. Uh, his channel already had more viewers, but right at the beginning of the Ukraine-Russian military conflict, um, I found his channel, and he was using global information systems and somewhat ingenious methods for figuring out what's happening on the ground, like satellites of like fires and various tactics. But now he's a big streamer. In fact, he had like Scott Ritter on, um, a pretty popular name, and a few live streams. He had almost 2,000 live viewers. But this was his open panel, and I popped on. It was an interesting discussion. So, God forbid, towards the end, this guy, Dan Castle, who is a former U.S. Marine who now lives in Siberia and has a channel called Wild Siberian. So I don't know if he became a little bit of a dissident and moved to Russia, and it's kind of a pro-Russian streamer, although he's a former U.S. Marine. But I said something that upset him, and
Wow, I was. I mean, I'm shocked. Just kidding.
he
I was
called me
actually
out
going to
on
ask
it
that.
actually.
I was going to ask it to try to just show off how great I am at science. But I mean, predicting that you were going to trigger someone on a show about politics, that's hardly a feat at this point.
Well, when it was about war, it was actually pretty friendly. No, I mean, we made up kind of, I apologized, and I even commented on one of his videos. Um, but I almost wanted to accuse him of taking low birth. But in relation,
And you didn't. So now there's one tangible benefit for all this other stuff on this show. You got
well,
that
maybe
one
not. It
a
may have been.
minimum tangible benefit. You were like, hey, wait, maybe Jen was sort of kind of right, / everybody in the audience.
Well, in relation, I was
If
talking
things were
about.
getting testy, there's no chance things would have gotten de-escalated at that point had you said that. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, so I mean, in this relation, it's is a soldier serving in Iraq, and I was mentioning like, well, you were fighting in Iraq for America. In America, the reason we were in Iraq was to maintain some sort of global order, as opposed to like Russia Ukraine's a border battle when we invaded Iraq. Obviously, there was 9/11, possible weapons of mass destruction, but it's more the maintenance of a global order. And he got question of my use of you. And he's like, you don't know why I served in Iraq. Like, you don't know what was going through my mind. And I was meaning it kind of like metaphorically for, well, the reason America, so you were just a soldier, like, God forbid, you were just someone who took low birth and ended up serving in the military for a paycheck and were in Iraq because they sent you there. And, so he has his perspective why he was there in, as opposed to, so to say, the elites or the American perspective of why we were fighting in Iraq. And I mean, obviously, the expression "low birth" wasn't applicable, or it would have been probably unnecessarily triggering. But I think it's also my point of it's the phenomenon that's triggering, and nothing's more triggering than the disparity between fighting other people's battles. And so you have dissidents who are like, we were fighting this war and it was nonsense, it was BS, it was a lie on behalf of the elites, that really there was no benefit to the war. God forbid, they were being forced to commit war crimes, and the reason they did it was because they were being lied to by the elites, and they didn't know any better because, so it's like, God forbid, they had a disadvantageous, humble background, and that's why they ended up in the military in that position. And so that's, you say, okay, well, obviously the term low birth would be on, so here I didn't even say low birth. I just said the reason you were in Iraq, and him just implying that I knew the reason why he was in Iraq was upsetting enough without even saying, the comment low birth, just to say the you, like the you, like, why were you in Iraq?
Kind of like when people ask you to answer for what's in the Talmud. Probably similar feeling.
Well, it's a disparity of, well, it could be similar, but no, I'm saying it was a disparity where I'm talking about kind of like him as a pawn. Like, you're just a soldier, whatever reason you're there, you're there. But the reason you were there isn't why you think you were there. You were there because of the reason the elites thought that this a war was necessary. And I'm not sure he was necessarily disagreeing with it, but just that terminology where I said you became upsetting to him, and he called me out on it, and we actually discussed it a little bit. So I thought I'd mention that. I didn't actually almost use the expression low birth. It wouldn't have came in like I would. I wasn't about to say low birth and held myself back. But as we were talking, I was thinking about low birth, and you kind of what I said in my essay. It's the phenomenon itself that's triggering. So the expression would have been even more triggering. But this is a quintessential example of the phenomenon itself being triggering, especially where it's like, okay, like, I'm on the front line. Um, you're putting my life on the line for something that's nonsensical, doesn't even serve my own interest, that serves the interest of, so to say, the elite, and someone who, so to say, took higher birth is just sitting back profiting off of these lies and unjust use of soldiers. And so obviously,
So
actually, all
basically,
three.
you're poor and got shoved through the meat grinder of the state to pay for to be the muscle defending the petrodollar supremacy. Don't hate me. I'm just a messenger.
Well, no, I mean, most of these people are soldiers. So I mean, Wyatt is a soldier. The three people on the bottom, Joshua, Vaughn, and Dan, are all U.S. soldiers, and somewhat they're dissident because they're supporting Russia. So even though they served in the U.S. Marines, Army, Coast Guard, National Guard, that they're somewhat distant because they support Russia. Um, so it's a different, like, Doovid's an intellectual, I'm not a soldier. So we're talking about war, and there's defense politics Asia, they're focusing mostly, although Wyatt has a variety of interests, his main background is as a soldier, and they're focusing on what's actually happening on the ground and the actual military perspective from a soldier. So I'm not a soldier. I was willing to accept their expertise on the subject, and the topic veered to politics and economics and law. So, from the political perspective, there's the reason why, the economic perspective, there's different reasons why we fight than if you're actually fighting, how you interpret what's going on. So, just that dichotomy of like the political class, the intellectual class versus the military class. And it's not necessarily a connection, but there's a loose connection between the birth situation, that most people who join the U.S. Army do it out of economical need because they get paid, and the benefits or the college education reimbursement programs or various things that disproportionately, um, it's poor people that end up serving the U.S. Army. And like he was saying, he did it because he felt like, I mean, he wanted to be patriotic, but that was his path towards success, I guess, or towards getting ahead. And so say if you took higher birth, you wouldn't even consider the military as a path towards getting ahead. It would be like, why would you go to the military before going to university if your parents could just straight up pay for your tuition to university? As opposed to if you didn't come from a type background where that would have been likely, going to the military could be a relatively wise strategic move for your long-term success.
Yeah, career wise, you retire before. I think it's like pretty short career.
Well, you get somewhat, I mean, one thing, you get paid, you get a small pension
You
or
can
health
get your
care.
school paid partly for.
Yes, I mean, there's most of the people in the U.S. Army come from uh, lower socioeconomic backgrounds. However, the political class that's like determining, so to say, why we go to war comes usually from the higher socioeconomical background. So there's a mismatch between why we go to war and the people who actually go to war. So if you're discussing like, okay, we're at war and you got to survive and you got to be a good soldier, and you don't necessarily know what you're fighting for, why you're fighting for, you didn't make that decision. That decision was made for you. As opposed to if you're from like the intellectual class, the priestly class, you're the one who's making the decision of whether we're going to fight and what we're fighting for, even though you yourself are. So that dynamic is there. And most of these people are soldiers. Most of these people are military experts, and led to a little bit of an interesting philosophical discussion. And then also like geopolitics. I know quite a bit about geopolitics, world affairs, world history. Um, a lot of military people go on to know quite a bit. So like all of these soldiers relatively know more about geopolitics and world affairs than even normally educated people, because the fact that they're soldiers and were deployed overseas and follow, most military action is global. So to a certain extent, soldiers actually have a better feel of international geopolitics than educated people. But Doovid's a big reader. I read the newspapers every day and books on the subject and follow the content. So I thought it made a good contribution to the panel. And, I was quick to befriend Wyatt from Singapore. And actually, we had a really interesting discussion. We talked about Chinese people. Wyatt's part Chinese. I mean, he's from Singapore and he's got mixed blood. But Singapore is I think Singapore is like 40% Chinese or something like that, and a lot of people there have mixed blood of Chinese and a few different ethnicities. But Singapore also has mandatory military service, and Singapore is relatively a very rich, educated country. So we talked a little bit about Chinese people and their high IQs, um, global education, the decline of the West, the rise of the East, and we talked about the group conflict between the United States, the West in general, and China, most specifically about copyright and patent law. So a lot of the soldiers kind of tuned out for that part, and there were a few other people that so it went back and forth between like straight military stuff where I didn't have much to say to more economic or geopolitical. But me and Wyatt had a good back and forth about conflict between China and the West related to patent law. And Prata, who's a smart guy, not sure if he's German or some sort of mixed ethnicity, and he speaks a few languages. He's probably a soldier also, but I'm not sure his exact background, but he is pretty well read and knowledgeable. Alan's a younger American. Um, Jai's Indian American engineer. The guy Vaz that was from Africa, like Angola. There was another man from like Pakistan, or it was a global panel. Irwin's from Mexico, and so it was pretty interesting conversation. It went on for like 5 hours. It was actually Wyatt's like 40th birthday also, and so it was open mic, the second one that I've been on. So felt good about that. To be active in stream, and it felt like a good conversation. Like so to say that there's not much international conversation. Most people even avoid the conversation on Russia Ukraine. Like we don't almost don't even talk about it at all on Week in Review, but it's basically still the biggest news story in the world. It could spiral out of control. God forbid. People estimate that possibly as many as 2,000 people are being killed a day right now. Um, so I felt like it was important, and I actually think that some of the best conversations on the web are actually being had on the Defense Politic Asia channel. Uh, possibly due to the neutral status of the Far East, Singapore, China. Also,
Wow, that's
um,
high praise. Be sure to check
also
that out.
they're neutral, but a lot of these people have a more. They don't necessarily favor Russia, but they're as opposed to the narrative that you get in the West. They all think that Russia's winning the war and going to win the war. They're not necessarily pro-Russia or like think that Russia's right, but they just think practically that Russia's winning. And in the Western media, um, the narrative is generally that Russia's losing the war. Not only Russia's wrong, but they're losing. And so the geopolitics of why China and the Far East might support Russia, or have Indian or Pakistani Africans, as opposed to English, U.S., maybe Australia, the English-speaking territories that might be strongly pro-Ukrainian. So was happy to participate. That was on Sunday also yesterday during Week in Review time. It ended at midnight. Wyatt, whatever time is there in Singapore, probably it was Monday already. But so God forbid, you remember Daniel Sinklowitz?
Yep.
So did you hear the drama?
I'm afraid I didn't. I don't keep up with the
So did you ever speak to
drama.
Daniel Sinklowitz?
Yeah, a few times on Bab's show, but like so briefly.
Yeah, I think he may have been in the chat on Week in Review, and I had kind of rocky relations, so I wasn't sure if it was
Oh
actually
yeah,
him.
that's right. I remember that now.
But I wasn't sure if it was actually him or just one of these fake accounts that was using his name because it's too hard to tell. But yeah, I mean, so anyone know Daniel Sinkowitz? Um, God forbid he's missing, and Norvin Hobbs claimed that he passed away, which he might have been about 60, and I think he first may have streamed on Brundlecast, and he was kind of like a dissident right, counter Semite, nationalist. Back when it was less popular, and he was actually an American dissident who went to live in Poland, and so back when the Brundlecast was going, and there were less dissidents like that, and he was one of the early people, and he was on the Brundlecast, and he was there, and he wanted, that was after Brundle landed Richard Spencer, and we had some of the bigger dissident names, and Daniel wanted to like kind of get on and promote his concepts of European nationalism and counter-Semitism. So obviously, me and Daniel had some conflict, but he built himself up as a micro streamer. He as a counter Semite and European nationalist, I think he streamed very often with OV and Norvin. And when Babs Cast was going, so ironically, he was always on the Babs Cast because, like, Babs would just have the link or open streams, and he would take the link and he would be on there. And, he was pretty counter Semitic. So I had a lot of, God forbid, even maybe, death threat escalations with him. That was probably
Oh,
over
that's
2
back
years.
in the Battlefield days, right?
Yeah, so that would have been over 2 years ago, the last time I spoke with Daniel Sinkowitz on the Babs Cast. I don't think I've spoken to him since the Babs Cast. Um, and he was kind of like I said, like Claire, Jennifer, Daniel Sinkowitz were just people who took the link. So Jennifer wasn't much of a streamer. Claire, Daniel weren't much of streamers. They were people with
Hold on a
ideas.
minute. Claire was already streaming, wasn't she? Because the first time I talked to her, she invited me to come on her channel. I don't know that she had that big of an audience. I seem to remember her and Jay going for hours with like 5 people.
Yeah, I mean, she had like 100 subs and maybe a few videos, but I think she already had a YouTube page. She already had a personality. She already had her concept of secular Quranism. But no, I don't think she was a streamer. She might have had a channel, and I even think the stuff she had on her channel was like recorded, that she wasn't even live streaming. Because if you remember, I think you actually had to teach her how to live stream.
Anyway,
Um,
there was Google Hangouts.
yeah, I mean, even that, I think you might have had to.
Yeah, but you remember the old version where it was embedded Hangouts streaming, right? Does
Yeah,
it
I
exist anymore?
remember. I'm pretty sure I was one of the first guests that Claire started live streaming with Jay. Her first few streams, she put up like recorded conversations. She even had something with like Greg Johnson or maybe E. Michael Jones, where she used to call people on the phone, record them, and put them on her YouTube page. But as far as I remember, she had not started live streaming when she first came on the Babs Cast. That was something after, and it was after that she first started. Her first live streaming was with Jay, and I was already a guest on like her third live stream. And because she was a woman, she at the beginning she needed a male co-host who was Jay, who was someone she actually knew IRL. Um, but whatever the history of that, that I said, like Jennifer, Claire, Daniel Sinkowitz, OV, uh, quite a few other people were just people who took the link on the Babs Cast, uh, and then eventually became micro streamers on their own. So 2 years, that was the last time I spoke to Daniel Sinkowitz, but I saw like
It was just so much fun. You forgot to mention Elliot. I mean, he was Doovid before there was a Doovid.
Well, he never started live streaming. He had like video. He had a YouTube page where he had like skiing or something. But I mean, I don't even think maybe he did like 1 or 2 live streams.
I think he might have toyed with the idea, but yeah, eventually just most people just like, I don't know, don't stick with it.
Well, he's still around. He's like, I mean, he was even on Luke Ford, I think, a few times this week.
As a micro
He's been
streamer, maybe like as a random going on the show once in a while to say hi. I'm not actually making his own content.
yeah. So he's a content viewer, and he actually pays. Like he's a Luke's member, so he actually.
There you go.
Uh, but so Elliot was someone who took the link, and most of those come from the Luke Ford stream. So probably Daniel Sinkowitz, although I think Daniel Sinkowitz came to Brundle not through Luke Ford. That he was a hardcore uh, white nationalist. So he came specifically to the Brundle cast because we had like pretty big names in white nationalism, and he wanted the chance to promote white nationalism. And one of the first things he wanted to do was get rid of Doovid. So it was obviously like our relationship was never friendly because he was like kind of straight from the get go was like get rid of this Jewish guy. What are you like what are you doing? So um, and then he was on the Babcast regularly, and usually when we were on together, it got escalated even to like death threats almost every time. God forbid. But
I'm
that was
sorry, who are you talking about?
I'm talking about Daniel Sinkowitz.
Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah.
I'm saying Daniel Sinkowitz came to the Brundlecast
Right,
specifically.
and you guys had bad. Okay, I honestly probably
It
just didn't
doesn't
even
need
watch
to be
that. Yeah,
explained. He
fine.
came specifically promoting counter-Semitism and white nationalism, and even when he came on the Brundlecast, his first suggestion was dump Doovid. So it wasn't even like a question like we were never friendly. I mean, like maybe professional, but like like he came for the first time. He was already a hardened counter-Semite and white nationalist. That was always his thing. That's what he came to streaming for the purpose of doing. I think that was the only thing he did. Like as opposed to even like Norvin, um, like he was a pretty driven person. That was his goal and intention to promote his European nationalist counter-Semitic ideas. So obviously, Doovid and Daniel didn't get along that well. So I was just mentioning that Claire was messaging me like people are saying Daniel died, and I didn't I didn't thought of him for 2 years since the Babs cast. I seen his name in the chat a few times, and like I wasn't even sure it was him, and it was like is he really on Week in Review? Like this guy, uh, I mean, he might like who knows? It might have been him, and I probably would have talked to him or let bygones be bygone, or just spoke to him anyways. But he never popped on. If it was him in the chat on Week in Review, no idea. But he was still active in um, counter-Semitic and European nationalist streaming, specifically Norvin. He was semi-regular on Norvin streams, maybe OV, but he had his own channel. Like he was his own micro streamer. He had a blog. He wrote, and I guess like a few months ago, he disappeared, stopped streaming, stopped responding to people that he had correspondence with, and then the rumor a few weeks ago from Norvin is that he died. So Stephen James, I guess, also from the he never came on the Babs cast. He started streaming after, but I guess was a Brundle follower. I don't think Jennifer likes him. Um, did you have some sort of beef with him, or you just didn't really
Who?
like his demeanor?
Who?
The British guy, Stephen James.
You have a beef with him. Yeah, I just don't like his demeanor.
Um, so he's a micro streamer now too. He kind of follows Wignat content, but he's so to say he's not necessarily counter-Semitic, but he follows content, and he does like interesting things like I think he does MMA and fitness, and he has like animals. He has like his pet tortoise. I've shared a few of his videos, so he's got like a whole animal collection of like tortoises and dogs or something like that. That's a little bit interesting, but I'm a little bit friendly with him, and I guess he got into streaming from the Luke Fortisphere. He used to watch the Babs cast but never joined. in the Brundlecast, and now he streams regularly. And God forbid he got his start on Claire Call. That the Babscast had already came and went, so Stephen started streaming by taking the link in Claire Call's stream. But I guess because he's British and has um, I guess European nationalist leanings, that he had spoken with Sinklowitz, watched some of his content, and so Claire asked him to talk about that because I guess he was the person that Claire knew the best, that knew Sinklowitz, and I think maybe Daniel also used to appear on Claire Call's stream every once in a while. I think Claire said that she was banned on his stream, but it was probably like Ralph, where off and on, where Claire and Daniel would pop on each other's streams, and then Daniel like permanently banned Claire, and then would unban her, and maybe even appear every once in a while appear in Claire's chat or even on their stream. So we reminisced about that and talked about just the dynamics, the danger of the personality going over, and I said that Doovid, maybe Jennifer, Stephen, Claire are kind of like full personalities that put a whole bunch of aspects of our life out there, as opposed to Daniel, I think, was more purpose driven. Maybe Claire is kind of like Daniel, purpose driven. Like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to promote secular Quranism. And like, you might talk about other things, but basically, um, the singular purpose. So Daniel was a driven singular purpose streamer that was basically trying to promote European nationalism. That's why he was streaming. There's some rumors, although I don't think anyone knows or could confirm, that he might have actually went to Ukraine and died in Ukraine in the war in Ukraine. Although all these rumors are unconfirmed. So that was a little bit random. I'm not sure if you have Control Ops was in the chat. Like, he probably, I think he also would occasionally appear on Daniel Sinkowitz's stream. Daniel Sinkowitz was actually semi-educated, well-read. So compared to like Norvin, I mean, Norvin actually reads books, but like, I think Daniel Sinkowitz actually had maybe even like master's degree level education. He had his own blog. He wrote articles, and he was pretty well-read and informed. But like I said, like like the very first time we spoke on the Brundlecast, his first suggestion was dump Doovid. We don't want Jews in the movement. So that was, God forbid, uh, I wish him the best. If he did pass away, God bless his soul. Or if he did, whatever happened to him, so just reminiscing about that this week on Claire Call. I wonder if you had any last comments on Daniel Sinkowitz.
Not sure what to say, frankly. It's sort of like, is he dead? Or anyway, if he's dead, bless him.
Yeah,
I came out wrong.
Hypothesis on like what form of how he was transmigrated to his next life.
Me giving a shit about someone's next life is a personal favor that I would do for a close friend.
Yeah, so okay.
Narcissistically compare myself to random people online.
Yeah, so Week in Review has migrated in the sense that because Doovid started out on Luke Ford in the Brundlecast, and the majority of the content was basically debating European nationalists and counter Semites. That was almost exclusively the content. So when we first started Week in Review, the majority of the viewership were Jews and counter Semites and various forms
it was
of
Luke's show.
European nationalist.
It was Luke's show.
Well, Luke's show had a variety of content that for a period of time, one of the main focuses was interviewing and talking about white nationalism and anti-Semitism. But Luke had a variety of content. as opposed to the Brundlecast, which was like an overfill of the Luke Ford show, was almost exclusively focused on that.
Yeah, that was like a political blood sport adjacent thing.
I mean, even Jennifer, the first probably 5 to 10 people that she streamed with were Wignats, counter Semites, or Jews. And I don't even know what happened.
Yeah, it was a celebration of free speech.
Who was that Australian guy that like the will to power guy?
Yeah, I think he was a Nazbol. But he said some
Yeah.
pretty, out there stuff, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was a straight counter Semite and nationalist. That was his main thing. Um, but I mean, you actually even streamed on his channel with him. You were friendly with him. You liked him. Um, OV, uh, Norvin, Claire, uh, there were a handful of Jews also, like half Galician, Babs, but that was originally. So when we first started streaming, and just had a few viewers, like it was Brundle and trolling and getting the link, and Will to Power was one of our early guests. We even had Josh Neal, who has made his return, was on a few times. Ov, uh, but because streaming, you have to take an audience. It's hard to build an audience, so usually your audience comes by bringing an audience from another channel, a bigger audience. So originally, Jennifer basically had no audience. So the
And
audience
I
were,
still don't because, it's not really a channel for, that kind of content.
well, you do it now. Now almost everyone in the chat are so mostly your people, like Anders. I mean, Tinkle was I think a Babs watcher also. I forget Skyworks, but like Daryl, the people you gave wrenches to, some of them go all the way back to the Babs cast, but a lot of these people are people that never even heard of Luke Ford or the Babs cast, and people that you've met in the last few years that never followed uh, the original content, which was debating counter Semites and European nationalists. And I would say almost the majority of the chat now probably doesn't even remember that stuff. It's like Tinkle Tank, uh, Mark Smith, some of the people that stayed from the original Brundle cast and are still watching Week in Review, even though the subject matter almost basically doesn't even cover that anymore. Um, but it's saying when we first started, you can't. So you were able to build an audience. You had to do that through appearing on Modern Day Debate, T Jump, various Discord servers in order to get an audience. But originally, the audience basically came from the Brundlecast and Babscast, and then you had to actually get appearances on other channels. Like first, it was JF Garepi, which also had more a tier towards uh, like Lauren Thiel. Like she found us through the public space in JF Garepi. Uh, but I would guess probably half the chat never watched the old Warski style, like the old Warski days viewers that came from later content of modern day debate, T Jump, and the the philosophical plebeian Discord server type things that you're in.
Woohoo!
I mean, even Daryl saying like he goes back to um, modern day debate, Amy Newman, completely different. So he doesn't even remember any of your content arguing.
See, in my view, I've always just been debating. It's just that the topics have been things that,
By saying that, just
this is what I
90.
want to talk about.
By just pointing out, like I say, Daniel Sinkowitz, Jennifer remembers who he is, And it's saying because 90% of the people when Jennifer first talked to when she first started streaming with were European nationalists. And that's just because that was we had no audience, and the only audience we had were people that knew Doovid from debating
You
European
mean the people
nationalists.
from the Babs cast?
Well, Babs Cast was the Luke Ford overfill room.
Because that's kind of who I feel like the audience was coming from.
Yeah, those were almost all European nationalists. Ov, Daniel Sinkowitz, Claire. Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where you found Will to Power.
I'm not sure that I did.
I seem to remember he was your guy. I mean, he was straight counter semi. He never liked me.
There were
He came on Week in
there
Review
was
a
a
few
brief
times.
time where people were showing up in the chat from
I
all
mean,
sorts of
Will to
places.
Power was like Daniel
So
Sinkowitz. Like
might have been
he
that.
never liked me. Will to Power was always straight up counter Semitic every time he was on the stream. He was basically like, I don't really want to talk with this Jew. Even though he was on Week in Review a few times. So like I don't remember. I mean, he was in Australia, so I don't even know how. I mean, it could be Will the Power found you through me, meaning that he was watching like Brundlecast. But I mean, he was like Daniel Sinkowitz. Like he was always straight up hostile to me, basically like as a straight counter Semite. So I don't know where you found Will the Power.
Or if I did. It's
Well, you were
sort of
on the channel.
annoying.
Like
Like it's
you
like
stream with him
really,
like
I feel
tens
like
of
you're
hours.
blaming me for something
I'm
that
not blaming you. I'm just saying like like facts are facts. Like you stream with the guy for tens of hours, and like I'm just saying
not
like
about those topics, about consciousness and about serious topics. And I was willing to talk to anyone and redirect people to sanity from obviously stupid choices.
yes, I was just
So now
asking
you want to throw
where
around
you
all
found
these
them.
labels and stuff that happened, many years ago. Okay,
Well, I'm just saying factual
moving
that
on.
people can watch a week in review. That guy was straight up hostile to Doovid. He didn't even want to talk about those topics with me because he was
Oh
counter
my
Semitic.
God.
Why are
Okay.
you being defensive? It's just factual. He was on
It's
week in review. You spoke
okay.
with him many times, and I interjected, and he was basically like just straight up counter Semitic. He didn't want to talk to me. You could like it's on your channel, the episodes that he's on. It's not really up to debate. Like these are factual things that happen in the early week in reviews. And I'm saying he was obviously your guy. He wasn't buddies with me. He was straight up hostile to me. So I was just asking you where you met him.
And
I
I'm
don't know why
saying
you're being
I don't
defensive about it.
remember. And if memory serves, there was a time where there are people coming in to the chat from pretty extreme parts of YouTube. Do you remember when the GDL was in the chat? And the
Yeah.
number of people in the audience went up to like 50?
Yeah, I mean, like, God forbid GDL's was still around and gotten quite big.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. There was a time when
I
YouTube
usually
was
have a
like,
pretty good memory for how and where I met people. So I mean, I guess you do not have a good memory. So usually,
maybe
like
he
Daniel
showed up in
Sinkowitz,
the comment section in the chat.
I
Is
remember the
what I'm
first
saying. But
time Daniel Sinkowitz appeared in the chat on the Brundlecast and on the show in the Babscast. So it's like Daniel
yeah, well, you
Sinkowitz.
have that
I
kind of memory where
remember.
you remember every last detail. I'm not like that. Okay.
Okay, so that's why I was just asking. I was mentioning, like one of our first when we first started Week in Review, one of our regular guest was this guy Will the Power, who was generally straight up hostile to me. But I don't remember where he came from, so I'm guessing he came from you. And I mean, I know you were on his channel a few times.
Or to YouTube, from YouTube, because he had a YouTube channel.
But yeah, that you were on a few times. I was never on his channel. Like he never would have had me on his channel.
Okay.
I mean, he might have came from Josh Neal. I mean, in different places. That I mean, in fact, if I remember it, maybe he did come from Josh Neal, and I don't even know if he's still around or not. I mean, he's definitely not streaming. I haven't seen him, although he could still be around. He was Australian. I mean, he was a sharp guy, but I mean, he was. I was just comparing him to Daniel Sinkowitz because he was basically straight up hostile counter-Semitic, where I couldn't even have a conversation with them about a neutral topic. So, so just thinking about the origins of Week in Review and how difficult it is to build an audience, and that that's almost nothing to do with the Week in Review of the last year. That the audience has shifted, and even our original guest, like Vince Bruno was a regular guest. Okay, I mean, because we can review this episode 192, these episodes are all there. People could look back, and I'm pretty sure Daniel Sinkowitz was never on Week in Review, but I'm not like there's 192 episodes as remotely possible he was. But okay, so I mentioned he passed away, God forbid. Okay, so it looks like Doovid will not be going to the Science of Consciousness conference. It's just too expensive, too difficult to plan out. Doovid's too scared to travel to Italy. Registration closes March 10th this week. No refunds allowed. So that's this week. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I think if Jennifer had taken more a positive interest in it, I may have done it. But it's complicated. It's in Sicily, airfare, hotel rooms, and I looked even like booking the hotels, and it was just too much for me to do without I don't even maybe I could have called Abby and she would have been nice and helpful to me, but I didn't, and I don't think I'm going to pay to go to the conference. They released the videos, so I think the value proposition is probably not there to pay for the conference this year. I do think if Jennifer had taken a more positive approach, not even necessarily, I'd consider that she would go also and we would meet there. But even if she hadn't been interested in that, but definitely if she had been interested in that, that would have been more likely. But if she had even taken a more positive approach, I would have been more likely to go. But people who are watching Week in Review remember those conversations. So the deadline's passing, so it doesn't look like I'm going to go to that. I will watch it. I'm probably not going to pay to go to it. They'll release the videos a few months after, like they did last year, and I'll definitely watch those. So I don't know if you had any comment on that.
Well, I still think you should go. I mean, why not?
Well, because it's expensive, because it's like a
So
country
what,
I have
you
no
can
idea
afford
about.
it?
I don't,
You can afford it.
well, it'd be a huge expense in saying that there's just a lot of unknowns, like the travel. Uh, like if we can review, because I was mentioning this already 3 months ago. So if we had geared Week in Review towards me going to the conference, I probably would have went. But instead, you kind of poo-pooed on the conference, and
I was just saying why I didn't want to go, but I think you should go because you'd probably
it's too
enjoy
late
it.
now. So if you had said that a few months ago, and then we had geared Week in Review talking to maybe finding someone who knew something about Italy or giving some advice on like the travel, or maybe someone who spoke Italian, but saying at this point it's too late, registration's closing, and because you
Well,
have
you
to book
still have 3 days to register.
yeah, and I'm not going to be able to do it in this week, and but I was saying if 3 months ago when I mentioned it, you were like, no, you should go, and even although you don't like conferences and wouldn't want to go, that we could have dedicated part of the show towards the logistics of me actually going. But so unfortunately,
Well, I had no idea you felt this way.
which way
Sorry.
that the deadline was going to pass and I'm not going to go.
That me saying I didn't want to go was going to make you not want to go. Sorry. I'm just, more the type to do what I want.
Well, no, I'm saying we would have had to dedicate. I mean, we did somewhat like in my research, but I, I, I don't know anything about Sicily or traveling, or even to have any real connections to the type people. So we would have had to gear and dedicate week in review more in line, and even trying to have as guests people who would be going to the conference. So I did not reach that level on my own, but saying like Justin Riddle or someone, streamers that ironically, God forbid, like someone like a few months ago pretended to be like this German scientist. It turned out it was a fake account pretending that they were like the speaker at the Science of Consciousness conference. It was like this German female scientist, but then it turned out it was a fake account. That was just one episode. Uh, but it's saying like, no, I mean, we would have had to have had on Week in Review like guests who were going to be at the conference and would have given practical advice like of the logistics of going to the conference. So,
Well, they don't know anything more about Taormina, Sicily than you do.
um, well, they might. I mean, there's probably
Why
the
would
reason
they?
because there's probably the reason it's in Terramona, Sicily is probably because it's connected to the local university, and probably people at the local university have participated in previous conferences. So someone like Justin Riddle, if we could have got him on Week in Review and spoke to him, and he would have been like, "Oh, speak to Professor so and so from Taormina, and he'll tell you what to do." And I could have done this on my own, but it seemed like it was just beyond my ability to the logistics of doing it. It wasn't even so simple. The airline, the getting a bus ticket from the airline.
Have you
Looking
ever
at
heard
the
of hiring a travel agent?
um, yeah, I mean, I could have conceivably, and like I looked at a few of these hotel, uh,
It's really fun to
trying.
go to a hotel, especially a super clean one. Daryl says it's a conference, they all work the same way. So, have you been to a conference before?
Well, the problem is the conference isn't in a. The conference is at a university.
Is that a no?
We've discussed this 100 times. I mean, like
Whether you've been to a conference where you stayed at a hotel?
I stream conferences on my channel. I
Yeah,
have
but I'm
like
talking
30
about
conferences
staying
on my
over in a
channel.
hotel. I'm talking about staying over in a hotel conference, obviously.
The conferences in my channel are at hotels. They're just in Detroit, so I don't stay
Are
at the
you?
hotel. I drive.
Yeah, that's my point. I'm talking about the conferences that would necessitate you staying in a hotel.
I've stayed at hotels for conferences in the past, and like in the last 10 years, no, because I live in Detroit, and the only conferences I go to are in Detroit, and I drive. I'm not going to waste but some of the conferences I stream are at hotels, but
That,
I
yeah,
drive.
wasn't the point. And you said this is at a school?
But I say no, this conference is not at a hotel, and so they had just a random list of hotels in the area. They didn't even have links, and I clicked on a few of these. They weren't even in English. So it's conceivable like I could have went. And Skyworks is saying like, yeah, I mean Jennifer did kind of like let me down. I mean she didn't let me down. She just wasn't interested. So this is the type thing like it would have had to been Week in Review where I would have gone through the logistics and tried to arrange this. And so Jennifer wasn't interested, so it didn't happen. So I was mentioning this week it's over, so um, I'm not planning on registering this week, so it's not going to happen.
Even though we could go through the logistics right now and You could still register. You're just not going to.
I mean, I don't think we could. I mean, in a sense, like, I could pop up uh, the cheaper hotel, and
Daryl says I didn't want to encounter anyone with a different opinion. I never said that. I said there's limited value and high costs to me to do something like that. That the value proposition is not there for me. Oh, we got the guilt trip starting in the chat. I've never been a Christian though, so it doesn't work on me, unfortunately. You try to shame me, but that means you'd have to come from a place of higher honor. Good luck with that.
Well, no, I'm saying, like, I just saying that if Jennifer had been more encouraging, I probably would have registered. But one of the reasons I didn't register was because Jennifer did not seem into the idea. And
so now, because I didn't, in a cloying, controlling, maternal fashion, manipulate you into going to a conference
I
in a
just
beautiful
up,
place
like,
that probably
this
is probably the best time
now,
of the year.
You even
This
seem
is
down on
probably
the
great
conference.
food time, good cheap alcohol. There's probably beautiful sunsets.
I mean, I had even
Suppers
actually
that go
originally
on till like 11 p.m. and you're talking about the best.
Yeah, I mean, just be
wine,
argumentative.
steaks,
I mean,
and
people
cheeses.
who are watching will remember what happened. And the fact is, I was even open to conceivably paying Jennifer's travel to go to the conference. And
that's super generous. Thanks.
And even if she's just like, well, I didn't have any interest in going, but encourage me to go. And then,
I do have interest in going. I just evaluate it to not be something that is going to be worth my time or energy. It's more the energy it's going to take. It's going to be exhausting.
I don't think I would be able to navigate, figure this out. So, like, their page has like just a list of hotels, and I don't think I would be able to figure out. I mean, I might have been able to, but it was, I just look. I did briefly look at these, and just looking that, that I would just book a hotel in Sicily and go. It seemed too much for me, and so if it was something that week in review we talked about every week and planned it out, maybe I would have done it. But just on my own, it was too much to to look at this. That I would have just done it. So if also it was actually at a hotel, it might have also been different. But the location it looks like it's at like a university, and there's not, so there's not like a connected hotel. So they just have a list of hotels in the area. And I mean, it's possible I could have called Abby or the center and they would have been helpful. But like I said, Jennifer was kind of down on it. So I just gave up on it and didn't do it. So the time has passed. So I just thought I'd mention that. Although, I will watch the Science of Consciousness.
I didn't know I was that influential.
Well, you're influential on my decision to not go to Sicily for the Science of Consciousness conference.
Okay, well, had I known that, I might have acted, well, I probably would have phrased it differently, yeah. But I think I did say you should go. So it kind of feels like you're like blaming me for your own claiming you were going to go and then not going, which is fine, but whatever.
No, I'm saying that you're the largest reason that I didn't go was your being down on it.
Or you're 100% the reason you didn't go, and I have nothing to do with it. And people just love blaming me for their bad decisions. Why do you feel the need
I wasn't
to do
doing
that?
Week in Review is the only time I talk about consciousness. If I wasn't streaming Week in Review and we weren't talking about the topic every week, I wouldn't even have considered going. So the only reason I considered going was because it's the main topic of Week in Review, and that's the main conference. It comes down to where I said you're like Renault in that sense. So like my approach to the topic would have been like, go to the conference, meet the experts, and get in with the experts, and that's not your approach. But it's like, obviously my only research with consciousness is week in review with you. So if I wasn't doing week in review with you, I wouldn't even consider the conference. But saying the natural progression of week in review was to go to the Science of Consciousness conference. Like so much last year, I paid for your online admission, and even this year, I even mentioned that I even considered paying for you to go to Italy. Um, but saying no, that's not your approach. You don't appreciate like the so-called expertise in conferences. So I just so
I
that sense, like
do. I
you
do
are basically
appreciate
the
all that
exclusive
stuff.
reason.
I
You're
just
the main reason I decided not to go.
I'm gonna get stressed out because like, what's the
And when I
point
have
of
the
me
argument,
going
like
there?
I would be going there to meet experts, getting good with them, and like you're more like Renault. So in that sense, that it wouldn't have made sense, like the direction of week in review to try to like meet and get in with the experts.
Get in with the experts. Okay, so you have a very Society of London take on this whole thing.
Yes, and that's why I would have. That's I'm saying that's why you're the reason why I decided not to go to
But
the
I
Science
don't
of
have a
Consciousness conference.
Society London take on this whole thing.
Well, you have an
Do I?
anti. You have
I'm
an
not
anti.
anti anything. I'm pro my own thing.
Yeah, I'm saying you're anti the institution, the Society of Experts.
No, I'm
In fact,
compelled by duty to help institutions. That's why I serve institutions when I can.
well, I mean, you can't accept that they're saying that.
You can't accept that things aren't black and white of being completely exceeding or
Well,
completely
I'm just saying
opposed to something.
my impression was
And it's irritating because it's just like this comically facile
my
not
impression was
misrepresentation, but it's
I had wanted
oversimplification.
to go to the Science of Consciousness conference. I thought it was the most logical, natural progression of week in review, and you didn't. So that's why I didn't. That's why I'm not going.
Okay, because I didn't think it was a logical progression of the show.
Yeah. And so if I had went to the conference, like I probably, like even week in review, maybe wouldn't even made any sense anymore. So I mean, the one thing, like I only research science of I mean, it's a topic like I mentioned, I read. It's interesting to
Why
me
wouldn't Week in Review make sense more? Because we would figure out consciousness conclusively and get to the end of it.
because the conference would be a different approach towards the science of consciousness than you do, and so it wasn't a natural progression to go to the conference and try to get in um, good graces with, or follow the research of the, so to say, experts and conference. And you even mentioned the Royal Society of London. There would have probably been members of the Royal Society of London. There probably will be members of the Royal Society of London at the conference. So you're like all the talk, like Doooovid about the Royal Society, like I would have paid to go to Europe to meet and network with people of the Royal Society. So, if my only person that I research these topics with is Jennifer, and she's opposed to that, it didn't seem like
I'm
a
not opposed to
sensible
you
idea.
going, and I told you as much at the time. It just seems like you don't want to go unless I'm going.
No, in fact, right away, I said you weren't going to go. I would have went even without you, but I would have, uh, but it would have needed to change the direction of Week in Review for that to make sense. And Week in Review did not. You're saying like we would, instead of having, I don't mind Renault or anything like that, but instead of having guests like Renault, we should have been having guests like Justin Riddle and people who are going to the conference.
Okay.
So maybe I'll go next year in Arizona. That would be less of a, obviously like it'll still be semi expensive, but want to have like a passport, or like trying
That would
to.
actually be awesome, because that's where Hammeroff is, so you could see his lab. And he's actually a good scientist.
Well, he's the head of the conference, even the one in Italy, and I don't know if they give a tour of his lab at the conference or if he does that, but it would definitely be easier to go to Arizona, and you're more likely that I would be that I would be able to pull that off without all the difficulties of going to Sicily and passports and visas and booking hotels in a language that I don't speak.
Yeah, it'd be a bit much. There's got to be a translator, at least. But I guess it'd be hard to understand what people were saying. They didn't speak English.
The conference is going to be in English.
Obviously, but you're not only going to be at the conference. There's all sorts of other stuff like restaurants and stuff.
Yeah, no, I think I could have navigated going to Italy, but it just it seemed like a bad investment and too much of a hassle if it wasn't going to be part of a change in the direction of Week in Review.
Then which direction would that be? We're not clear on that.
Towards
the subjects they're going to cover at the conference?
Towards the subjects and towards making colleagues with the people at the conference. That like as like I mentioned it like 3 months ago, by saying that moving into Week in Review, that I would have already been that we would talking with people who were going to be at the conference. And moving into Week in Review being more in line with something that would have regular guests of the type people who go to the Science of Consciousness conference or present at the Science of Consciousness conference. And I mean, my impression was you were even against that. Like that I didn't even attempt to reach out to request to speak to any of those people. Or that it seemed that was agreement that if I did, I would be doing that on my own to speak to on my own channel, not to invite on Week in Review.
Did I say that? Don't quite recall putting it that way.
That you had no interest in.
Remember when I talked to the guy from Remember when I talked to the guy from Theology Unleashed?
Yeah, I mean
that didn't go good. That didn't go good, did it? So to speak.
Yeah, I think you were kind of insistent like that. That
one of us was insistent on some doctrinal stuff.
Well, I'm saying you were insistent, similar with the people of the Science of Consciousness, that you would like consider it your obligation to not be respectful to these people.
No, I don't know, because I haven't actually seen myself to even going to this thing in the first place. If I was going to go somewhere, then I would sort of work up like a plan, sort of philosophy for that trip. But this is an inconceivable.
If you put in that term, you saw it as your obligation to be disrespectful to Arjun.
You think that? That's
I could give you a list of like 10 people that, like, God forbid, have told me they never want to come on Week in Review again, specifically due to what they consider you being disrespectful to them.
Oh, okay.
And whether they're accurate or being fair or not is tough to know. But saying it is relatively common, and that was, God forbid, something that Arjun said, like, God forbid, he never wants to come on Week in Review to
well, the question is, if we went over that and we decided, we actually had some people arbitrate who was in the wrong, who do you think would end up being in the wrong if it was looked at objectively.
I'm not sure it matters to say that there was a right and wrong. We're just saying that it was unsuccessful, and the result was a person that never wants to come on Week in Review again.
Okay.
So you're just saying that to move into trying to have people within the Science of Consciousness conference. I thought you were basically saying that you felt that was basically guaranteed to happen if we spoke to any of those people.
It would be very hard for it not to.
Yeah, that's where I said, like, I would consider for myself that being almost unfathomable, something like that happening, and that I would assume that I would hopefully be on good working relationships with any of those people after I spoke with them.
Yeah, I would hope that I would be on good working relationships with people as well.
Well, you said you wouldn't be. That's why I never.
And then based on all this evidence where people were just so unfathomably disgusted by something I said, that tells me, okay, well, there's no point in even trying. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so we don't have to rehash this. But I was saying, like,
I know exactly what's going on, and it's just like, okay.
You're basically the reason why I decided against going to the Science of Consciousness. Your
so
reaction.
Me being there with you would be the liability because I'm 0 for 10.
No, I mean, I already accepted
Your
that.
thing doesn't
I would have offered for you to go when you said no, you don't want to go, and we discussed that fine. Like, I wasn't gonna say again. So I said that I wouldn't only went if it was in line with my research and Week in Review. But you talked about it with you, and me going to the Science of Consciousness conference is not in line with Week in Review and the program. So I mean, these things, like, we very clearly, like, I'm pretty sure I clearly laid out what I said a few months ago. So if you're not clear about what you said, or backtracking on what you said, or God forbid, you're claiming that I misunderstood what you said, but I thought it was pretty clear. And so now at this point, I'm saying that the deadline's passed, right? I mean, it's passing, and so I'm just mentioning that. And
Dark Matter wants to know how it makes me feel, or I don't know who you're asking. Not much.
Well, I feel, I guess, disappointed because I'm a progress-oriented person, and I thought that would be the natural progression in my research.
What do you need my permission for? Like, well, what's going to hurt for you to go to this thing and learn something about it? It's like as if it's going to contradict
I don't
what
need your permission.
what I think.
I'm saying that it diminished the value proposition.
Wouldn't going with me diminish the value proposition due to my liability to piss people off?
No, man, I think it's unlikely you would have pissed anybody off. You probably,
even though there's those 10 people that never want to come on the show again, and there's people in my real life that similar things have happened.
Yeah, but
due to extreme emotions.
But I'm saying those people interacted with you. I think if you just went to the conference, you probably would have hardly interacted with anybody. So I don't think you would have had the opportunity to piss people off at the conference. We would have just been spectators in the audience, and it wouldn't have been like a guest on Week in Review. You wouldn't have had the ability to interact with the people to irritate them. And even if you asked, like, I can't even imagine a question that you would have asked during the Q&A that would have caused them to irritated. That it was specifically the power dynamic of being a guest on your show that allowed them to be irritated. But in the
it's hard to imagine going to one of those things and not ending up at a dinner with like 30 to 40 other people, which is fine.
No, I'm saying I don't.
Normally, if I'm going to go to those things, I know at least one person, or I know what I'm going there for. Okay.
Yeah, but there would have been no venue where you would have been talking and everyone would have been listening.
Oh,
and
really?
Even if there was a dinner,
even if it was a dark bar where the conversation eventually ended up about consciousness, and me and some Yahoo decided to get into some type of a bullfight, which I didn't start. By
Well, I
the way,
said that there
then
would
what?
there would
Then what? That there wouldn't happen. Oh, for sure that
it's
wouldn't
just a
happen, right?
logistical factor that there would have never been an opportunity where you would have been
I just
talking.
gave you the completely plausible
That
scenario,
would have
which
been
you
you and one person
promptly
in a
ignored.
bar if you're arguing
Everybody
in a
would be
bar.
paying attention because we'd be 30 to 40 people who gone out to dinner together, which I just said and don't appreciate that you ignored.
No, I don't think that there. You're saying that. When would there have been a point where you would have been talking and everyone would have been listening at the conference? So I'm saying
I
that
told
wouldn't
you
have
now for the
occurred.
third time, fucking in a
So
bar,
you're saying that if
in a
you're in a bar,
restaurant, bar or restaurant, as in, oh my God, the conference is over. Anyone want to grab a drink? Sure, cool, let's go. Hours later.
yeah, but where's the point where you would have been talking and more than one person, three people would have been listening?
What did I just say 3 times though?
You're not making sense. So you
Have you
just
ever
said,
heard of going to a restaurant in a group? Because a lot of times conferences actually plan those out. I'm not saying I'm going out looking for whatever. I'm just saying
I don't picture there
it's
would have
not
been.
just all coincidences that I've caused so many people's blood to run hot. I'm not looking for it, but obviously
Yeah, I
some
mean,
people
like,
can't deal with facts.
yeah, I don't. I mean, God forbid you said like, I mean, I have to repeat the argument with like some delusion of grandiosity, saying like
Daryl, it's just really hard for
there
me
would have been
to
no
not
point
defend
where you
my
would have been
honor.
talking and
It's
everyone would have
hard for
been
me to
listening.
not defend my honor sometimes, right? It's hard.
Yeah, but it was just nonsensical, and it's saying even what you're saying now is like why I'm not going to the conference, and I couldn't even think of a scenario that when we discussed, I can't even think of a scenario where you would have been talking and there would have been multiple people listening.
It's
You know, for
really
you to
funny.
irritate somebody. That it was a conference, you would have been you would have been in the audience, and the only
So
people who
you
would have
can't
talked to you would have
imagine
been
going out to
voluntarily.
dinner with a group of people and having a combo. You can't imagine that.
Well, yeah, of course I could imagine that.
Okay. So there's your audience.
But it would have been voluntary. That if someone talked to you, it would have been voluntary. And so if someone was voluntarily talking to you, um, I doubt they would have got riled up and upset. They might have disagreed with you. They
Well,
might
then
have
you're
laughed
and
at
this is
you.
exactly why I said until you change your attitude on this, I'm not even going to think about doing it because you don't believe me and I don't appreciate not being taken my word for. This is exactly where you need the subjunctive. Had you respected me, things have been a lot more positive.
Had I respected that, like somehow you would have like rose to the conference and took in the mic and talked, and
I didn't
everyone had
say
been
that.
listening,
I didn't say that.
or like some like
You're not
scenario where like
listening
everyone
to
would
what
go to
I'm
dinner
saying.
and you would be in
That's
argument with
one
someone in the
possible
corner
example.
and talking
That's
so
one
loud
possible
that
example.
everybody would stop to just observe your argument with somebody. I don't even
You
picture
have
that.
not met me in person. And
You're
if
saying
you
if I
do,
met you in
you'll
person,
understand. How tall are
that
you? How
you would
tall are
be in
you?
the corner
How tall are
arguing with
you?
somebody
How
so
tall are you?
loudly
How
that
tall are you?
everybody else would stop and just pay attention to your argument and then get so upset over what you're saying.
I'm not saying that'll definitely
I can't
happening.
even
I'm
picture
not
that.
saying that'll definitely happen. I'm saying it's happened enough that there's no chance I'm going somewhere with someone who doesn't believe that that could happen and isn't going to back me up to make sure it doesn't get worse. You don't back me up, you back the other person up. So it gets worse.
Went
So
back,
there you go.
saying like I can't picture that unless you like I picture that saying
I
like,
wouldn't. That's the whole thing,
that
John Wolf.
you
I
would like
don't
cause
initiate these
you would
fucking debates.
you
They
would like
start
be
out as
disruptive.
conversations, and then certain people get offended by certain things and can't deal with certain realities, and then decide that it's time to take vengeance on me for awesomeness reasons or go fuck off. If you can't deal with that fact, maybe just try being awesome once in a while, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
No, I can't. I mean, you would have to if you like. So I interpret what you're saying is that you would have purposely caused a disruption.
That's not.
And I can't imagine any other scenario unless you purposely caused a disruption, how you could even irritate someone at the conference.
See, this is absolutely victim blaming at its finest. And this is why civilization is going to fucking collapse.
Not even
Because
victim blaming.
it
I can't
causes
even
resentment on a level
imagine.
that is just, you don't want
I
resentment
can't
on
even
that level.
imagine a
It's not
scenario, and it sounds like
proper.
you're saying you would just like go into a bar and start yelling so loudly that like to force people to hear your ideas, that and somehow your ideas would cause them so much frustration. Um, I can't even imagine a scenario where
Exactly.
there would be more than one or three people listening to your ideas, and if they did, it would probably be voluntary, where they would be somewhat um, amenable to receiving your ideas. And so you like I can't even picture a scenario unless you're being purposely disruptive, where there's even a possibility
If
where
I
you
have
would be
friends,
talking and
then
there would be
there's not
more than a
usually a
few people
problem. If I
listening.
have some friends, there's not usually a problem because I got my insulation friends. I'm good.
And so I mean I was interpreted saying that like something about you that you would, if you went there, you would feel you had to cause a disruption. And
So you just want to blame me for people attacking me out of jealousy? That's fine. But you're always going to be wrong.
I
If
still
you
don't
keep
see.
using the wrong model, you're going to be wrong every
I
time.
don't see how
I
you
don't
would just.
care.
Yeah, no, I can't even imagine the
I don't
scenario.
see how the laws of logic can make sense, but I still acknowledge they exist.
Yeah, so anybody watching this, okay, this is why Doovid didn't end up going to the Science of Consciousness conference.
Which
I could have
logically
went
he
on my.
should want to go without me because I'm supposedly this
I
big
did want to go
liability.
without you,
I'm
but it
supposedly
was
this
just
big
too complicated
liability,
to
blah,
go to
blah,
Italy.
blah.
So
So
if people
logically, he
watch
should
Week
want to
in
go
Review,
alone. He should want to
if
go
people
alone, but
watch
now he
Week in
wants to
Review,
blame me. He wants to
it
go
would have had to
beyond
take
that
a
and
different turn.
blame me. Blame
It
me
had
for his
nothing to do with
deciding
it.
not
So it
to
would have
go.
had to,
Okay.
like people in the audience or people, I would have needed some sort of connection, some sort of help, positive feedback from the viewership that, and I didn't get it. So, I felt it was a bad investment. And certainly on the Jennifer perspective, I thought it probably even make it more likely that we wouldn't continue doing Week in Review if I went to the conference than that it would improve Week in Review. And, her reaction there is why I felt that way. So,
Yeah, that's very long silence. Yeah, actually, audience, if you're interested, this kind of shit happens to me all the time. All the time. I'm a very easy target to be blamed for stuff. All the time. I don't know. It's a societal thing. It's really weird. I actually had to go to therapy for it. If you really want to know something about my personal life, yeah. So that was quite challenging. But guess who was right? Guess who was proven right at the end of it? Me. Yeah. Democratic fallacies, like all that stuff, it's like, okay. This is really just down to, are you going to have my back or not? I didn't get the impression you were going to have my back.
yeah, I mean, you're basically just not making sense to me.
Well, I got to tell you, I guess
Because
you don't understand the
you're
street. I
back
guess
like,
you're projecting when you say that I don't understand the city. You're actually talking about yourself.
well, because you seem to be implying that
You have
I
to
would
be
have went
tough.
there as
You have
I
to be
would have went
somewhat
there
tough
as
in
an
a
audience.
male-dominated field.
I would have went there as an audience member to learn from other people. And so you're implying that like I would have had your back for you to like disrupt the conference and promote your ideas, or to say you had no interest, there's nothing for you to learn from these other people. So in a sense, like no, there's no, I wouldn't. There's no platform for you to go to the. You could network or meet people, but it wouldn't have been a platform for you to go and promote yourself. It would have been a platform for you to go and learn from other people. And so I would have been happy to go there and just learn from other people. And so if you mean like have your back to like disrupt the platform or try to have you take over the conference, I still don't understand
Do
what
you
you're
honestly
saying.
think
It
that
makes
that's what I'm
absolutely no
saying?
sense to me. The only way I can interpret what you're saying is that somehow you would have wanted to disrupt the conference and me to like have your back in disrupting the conference. And that's why I was
What if
like, hey,
somebody
like,
attacks
Duva's
me?
not going.
Okay,
Duva's not going. Doesn't make sense. A
what if
bad
somebody
waste.
attacks me then? You seem to say that if I get attacked, I deserved it. Is
Well,
that
if we were
right?
at the conference sitting next to each other and someone attacked you, I would probably defend you. Like if we were in Italy and someone like tried to like beat you up on the street, I would probably defend you. But like if you
I'm
like
talking
insist
about in a
if you insisted
convo.
on like
I'm talking
yelling in some
in a
corner,
convo. Am I going
if
to get a knife in the back in the middle of a conversation with 5 other people? That's what I can't count on. And I don't accept, I'm sorry, it's a personal preference. Don't accept any undermining of my authority by people in my entourage. Don't care if you don't like it. It's personal preference. Move on.
well, yeah, I mean, God forbid, like I would have
God
went just as
forbid.
an I would have
God
just went
forbid.
as an attendee. I wouldn't even say like I'm the one paying. You would have been part of my entourage, not me
Okay.
part of your entourage. But I wasn't even saying that. Like I would have just went as an attendee to listen and learn from the other people presenting. Like you're coming, like you want to be there with your own entourage. Like no, you would have been an attendee to learn from the people presenting. And if that wasn't your intention, it would have clearly been a waste of my money. And so like I quickly gave up on that idea. Like no, I wasn't going there to like pay for you so I could be part of your entourage. It would have been so that you could learn something from the people presenting at the
The
conference.
person with the model on consciousness has to learn about consciousness. Is that how it works?
Well, yeah, I mean, even the people there that have models of consciousness that are
They don't.
presenting still go there to learn from other people presenting. The main purpose of the conference, even for the people who are presenting, is to learn something from the other people. And like, no, if you did not have intention of learning from the other people, I certainly would have been a waste of my money to, saying if you were there to present, like they would have paid for you, someone else would have paid for you to go there. If you were a presenter, I mean, maybe if you were a presenter, they invited you to present, and you needed money because like that you could have presented, but they weren't going to pay for your trip. You had to self fund that. Like maybe I would have supported you for that, but that was not the case. We would have been purely attendees. So that's why what you're saying seemed nonsensical. We would have just been there in the audience listening to learn from other people. If that didn't interest you, you didn't seem to have any interest in going there to listen and learn from other people. And then even to direct week in review in that direction, um, I think you just demonstrated my point. So anybody watching should be clear why Doovid did not end up going to the conference.
I mean, I don't even think it's that wild. Whatever people are not agreeing in the chat, it's like, don't disagree with me is really just not that high of a bar. I'm entitled to say what I want about my stuff, and I do not care to have somebody be like, nah, that I brought with me. Keep it to yourself. Don't have the buy-in on that.
You
Don't
brought
want to
what
go
you,
out.
yeah, you're, I mean, God forbid, like, I mean, delusion's the only word I could think of because, as I said, like, you would have just been an attendee at the conference to listen to other people.
And
There
you're
would not have been
delusional
a
to think that there
venue.
never would have been a random social conversation.
Yeah, there could have been a random social conference, and there might have been people there that would have been interested in hearing what you had to say. And I don't think that would have had anything to do with me. Like, so if I mean, presumably we probably would have went to dinner together a few times, but maybe not. We might not even went to dinner together. And if you were at the conference and you started speaking to somebody and promoting your ideas, that would have had nothing to do with me. But that wouldn't have been the purpose of the conference. The purpose of the conference would have been to learn from other people. If you met other people and promoted your ideas, good for you. You did some networking, good for you. That's part of what you're supposed to do at a conference. But that it wasn't my intention. And one, I mean, I don't think you would have been that successful. And two, that wouldn't have been what I thought it would have been uh, a worthwhile expenditure of money, so to say, to go to the conference and to try to promote my own stuff there or your own stuff there. And I guess like so if you told
I
me
wouldn't
like
be, quote, trying to promote my own stuff there, but if I got in a conversation, the
well, of course,
pylon,
if you got in a conversation and someone asked you,
the pylon can't happen. It's enormously stressful for me.
I can't even fathom a
You've
scenario
never
that you're
been
referring
piled
to.
on in a conversation before by a bunch of people who disagreed with you on something?
If you mean shot down, like, yeah, I got shot down like when I day traded, when I was in Judaism, even till today, I always get shot down. So if we were in public, even my dad, my brother, my own family members. So if I was in public and I started, promoting my stuff, my brother, my father, my mother, my sister, my friends would probably all shoot me down in
Right.
public, in
Well,
front of
I don't,
people. Like, yes, I've
homie,
been
don't
shot
play
down.
that shit.
Everybody always shoots me down
Homie, don't play
everywhere
that
I
shit.
go.
Homie, don't play that shit.
And like, no, I don't think. I mean, it's like if we were at the conference sitting and you start talking to somebody that like I would have just interjected in the conversation, like, oh, by the way, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Um,
I
I
wouldn't
don't
want to
imagine
I wouldn't
myself doing
feel
that.
confident that you
Whether I
wouldn't
would have backed
interject
you up,
on their side, which you've done on Weekend Review before. You've taken the guest side instead of defending my honor, taken the guest side. So I figure you'll probably do that in real life too, which would
well,
cause me to be
if
having
you're
some
talking side, or if
heart
you're saying,
indigestion type issue, which I don't want.
if we were talking to a person that we never met and they believed in the Bible,
I'm
and
not
you were
talking about
arguing,
the Bible. I'm talking about a model unconsciousness. Obviously, would be under the
well,
purview
it's like
of the
I would, even if
conversation
we just met them, I would
of the
agree.
conference.
I would agree with the biblical conception, like, okay, this is Jennifer, and she's my friend. She's got their ideas, but actually, I'm more in agreement with the person that you're arguing with. That I personally side with the biblical conception more than my own friend's conception. That what you mean? That like, yeah, I probably would be like that, but I wouldn't. I don't think I'd shoot you down. I know what it's like to be shot down, and I think that's actually pretty normal place. That like,
I
oh, by
know
the
it's
way,
normal, which is why I go with the posse and I say, do it and you're out. And that's the whole thing of how it works.
at a bar, not at, I mean, at a conference, especially where you're just an attendee.
Just saying, it's a
You're saying
personal
you would have
protocol
popped
for
into the bar
anyone.
with your own posse and be like, oh, by the way, even though I'm just an attendee, I know more than all of these people, and your posse would,
That's not at all how it happens. Okay.
and then
I've
like
given you
Doovid, if
examples
Doovid
and
doesn't,
like,
and
you
she'd be like,
just don't believe.
Ask Doovid,
I'm
do I
not
know
going to
more
do
than
that.
everybody? And Doovid would kind of be looking at like, oh my God, she is crazy. And then you would be like, why are you shooting me down? So like, yeah, that probably would happen. You would go to the bar and you would start yelling in the corner and be like, I know better than everybody. And then you would turn to
Of
like,
course not.
look like, Doovid, back me up that I know better than everybody. And I would like look at the floor like, oh crap, she is crazy. And then you would yell at me for not having your back. Like, yeah, God forbid that's how I was picturing what might happen. And that's why I didn't
Oh
go to
my
the
God.
conference.
It's just that I feel like
As
you
where
don't
I would have
believe
just been
me
happy
when
to
I've told you
been a
the
quiet
examples.
attendee, shake a few hands, get a few selfies. I would have been content to go to Sicily and just listen, get a few selfies, and shake a few hands.
Cool. I'd be fine to do that too. I'm just not fine to what's
I mean,
being
Daryl's saying like, I would
mischaracterized
protect your
as
honor. I wouldn't protect your
disagree
delusions.
with you.
I mean, if
Uh,
someone came over and like groped you or something, like, yeah, I would probably stand up. And I don't even know, like in Italy, if someone came over and like groped you and I got in a fight, like I might end up in Italian prison. I don't know. So I mean, like,
that's literally not what I
I
was
mean, if that's what,
talking
like,
about.
defend your honor that we went to the conference and someone groped you,
Don't
and,
push back on what I say.
but it's saying like defending your,
Period.
I would
Don't
defend your
push
honor, but
back
not your
on what
delusion.
I say. Period. That's it. If someone can't respect that basic thing, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah. So like, I mean, generally, like, yeah, I mean, no, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to do that with Jennifer. Other people, like, I would be able to work out a game plan and just say like, okay, we got different ideas, and we would be able to like quarterback a game plan, like a networking game plan. And so like Jennifer doesn't know how to network like that. She doesn't
I'm
know how to.
sure that I do. I could network
She
no
doesn't know how to play
problem.
ball. Like I go to conferences all the time,
Yeah, I've been to a
events,
bunch of conferences
and
too,
I
and there
work with
hasn't been
people
any
that I
problems.
disagree with,
But there's
and
been sort of
we could
problems.
work out like a game plan. Like, oh, Hamarov's in that corner, and Chalmers is in that corner. Like you go for Hamarov, I'll go for Chalmers, and like or some sort of game plan. But like obviously, um, like I'm an Orthodox Jew, and like Jennifer has like her own theories. Like obviously, we're not preaching the same thing. And if someone asked me, like, I don't even know Jennifer's theory. Like I said, I don't think I wouldn't like shoot her down. I'd back her up. But if someone, like I'm not going to like disavow my Orthodox Judaism or one of my fundamental beliefs to that it's not even sensical to me what Jennifer is saying in a way that would be a sensical game plan.
I
And
really just feel like a lot of
I've worked
people
out
don't want to be
sensible game
wrong. I feel
plans.
like a lot of people don't want to be wrong. I feel like that's super relatable. Like there's people in the chat that can't relate to this. It's like, I don't want to be wrong. If I am wrong, you're not the one who's going to be telling me I'm wrong. You believe in straight lines, dumbass. You can't see shit into physics if you believe in straight lines.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid. So, like, I mean, I had to, so Doovid clearly demonstrated why I'm not going to the conference this year, God forbid. It probably would, like, I'm disappointed, and I think it would have been better in terms of what I consider progress in goal directed behavior that had I been going to the conference and had we can review moved in a direction that would have been more amenable to going to the conference and networking and discoursing with the type of people that are at the conference. But I won't, say, I mean, if the word like blame or Jennifer's fault, saying like, okay, well, I'm doing like Jennifer's the only person I'm working with, and she's not amenable to it, so it's not happening.
I'm surprised you don't see value in going by yourself.
Well, I do see value, but it's just not enough to justify a week of my time and the expense and the uncertainty of like going to another country that I don't know anything about.
Well, I know I'm not going to sell you on the virtue of a new experience for its own sake, so I won't even try.
Yeah, and it would have been like more practical. So if it was like 3 months ago, and there'd been a regular direction towards the preparation for me to go to the conference, then I would probably be laying out the money and booking to go to the conference. So it would have been a long-term preparation, and week in review would have had to move in the direction of being a straight preparation for going to the conference.
Okay, so next year, want to aim for that one for you?
Probably not. I'm looking at it like probably not because I'm even thinking Arizona, like um, because you're the only person that I work together on this, and I'm not sure the benefit of me networking with these people. Like I don't see um, me ever getting into those circles, and I mean possibly like I'm obviously I have a full year till I even mentioned like that I would submit a paper to be a presenter at the Science of Consciousness conference, and that will probably be around December this year that there'll be the deadlines for submitting a paper for the conference. Um, I mean, I'll leave it open as a possibility, but like I don't see Week in Review changing to that demeanor to being working towards something that would be amenable with something like like a professional conference like that. So I'd say it's unlikely, but that's probably more Doovid style. even the last few weeks, that was more my style, just kind of like straight up reading from scientific papers and getting right what other people say, getting
Yeah.
accurate understanding of what other people say. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a whole year. So I'd say at this point, something would have to change in week in review, or like if we stop doing week in review, and the possibility that I would somehow continue this research on my own is probably unlikely. That like if week in review ended, that I would like still like stream and find an audience to hear me ramble about consciousness or do this research is pretty unlikely. So that within the way we can, unless that's there's a big change within you and how you want to run week in review, I'd say it's pretty unlikely.
So how many weeks of week in review do you think you'd need to prepare to go to a conference?
Um, well, I don't know, like preparation, right? Saying that either, I mean, we made some progress this year, but I was saying to present it, to present at the conference would be the publishing of a paper that would be submittable, that would be accepted for the conference. So I don't even think I'm close. That like so there'd be the deadline, probably December of this year, to submit a paper for next year's conference. So the likelihood that I mean, like without week in review, the chance that I would even work or write a paper that could be submitted for that is close to zero. So I mean, with week in review, the chance is still pretty unlikely. But so week in review would have to be goal driven towards that step of having a paper that could be accepted by the Science of Consciousness Conference by December. And I'd say that that's pretty unlikely, but it's possible. And then if it comes up next year, like, okay, do I want to go to the Science of Consciousness Conference? I probably wouldn't do it because it's probably like I'm kind of cheap with money. And like, I don't know if it's worth a few $1,000s to like shake hands and get a selfie with Hamerov. Because I'm not sure the value proposition would, because basically I would be going there just to listen.
To see his lab?
I don't even think I would be able to see his lab.
I assume it's part of the conference.
No, I didn't see it. It wasn't anywhere on the agenda. I didn't see any video or picture of a tour of his lab. I watched all the stuff they released. There wasn't one thing about a tour of his lab. And I didn't see a video of a tour of his lab. I didn't see anyone release a paper or an article about getting a tour of his lab. So I have no reason to think that I would have got a tour of his lab. I mean, that's something maybe I could have called Abby. Like if I tried to, I mean, I may be able to get, I mean, maybe even Abby would. That's what I'm saying. Like I'd have to get like Abby on Week in Review or something like that. Like I was saying, like that, like then I might have went to Italy. Like if I could have got Abby on Week in Review, and she would have told the logistics and she would have helped explain like booking the stuff like that, I probably would have went. But it's saying like Week in Review, like I'm not even sure that it would have made sense, or even like you're saying it would have made sense for me to even reach out and attempt like, oh Abby, will you appear on Week in Review? Abby Behar.
Did I say it didn't make sense? I feel free.
So I was saying, like, if between now and the next few
Was
months,
this about the worry about there's going to be friction between me and the guests on the show?
Well, yeah, I mean, now it's too late for this year, but I mean, so if you're changing your mind, or you're saying
I didn't have an opinion. I just said I told you already how I felt, and you're trying to extrapolate all this extra stuff. I don't give a shit.
Like a good idea that
Can we
like
move
I
on?
invite Abby on Week in Review, and then I could probably straight up ask her like, can we get a tour of Hammarb's lab? Like, what happens if I go there? What's the likelihood of being able to meet or share my ideas with other people? Um, so I mean, certainly, like, if when I mentioned this 3 months ago, and like I basically got the same reaction from you that I'm getting now, instead, like I had a more positive reaction than like I would have, like, oh, say, so should I call Abby and invite her on Week in Review? So if that had happened like a few months ago, then like maybe I would be on my way to Sicily. So for next year
God.
in Arizona, that would be something. Yeah, that would be make it much more likely. Like if Abby came on Week in Review, and it had a positive conversation with her, then it would make it extremely likely I would consider going to Arizona.
Great.
And I don't know if you picture that. You're saying it's conceivable you could picture that Abby would come on Week in Review and it'd be a positive conversation. And
I can't see how it wouldn't be.
well, can you think of a
Well,
single other?
like, I mean, I think maybe giving the questions in advance, because something like, "Can we go for a lab tour?" Maybe she'd feel like she'd put on the spot. Because you don't usually want to put people in a position where like have to say like no.
I'm pretty sure she would. I wouldn't mind asking her that. Like I'm pretty sure she would have not had a hard problem just saying yes or no. Like no, he doesn't do that, or yes, or whatever. Like that's the type of question I would have asked. That you definitely would have asked her, or might ask. Something that's not relevant for Italy. Like Italy, I would need like reassurance for like how to book a hotel or the logistics. Like you got to take a bus from the airport or various things. For Arizona, like I mean, it might be just a tiny bit of support for the logistics of like booking a hotel, but like, that's definitely the type of question I would ask her. Like what are the networking, socializing opportunities? Are there tours of laboratories or something like that? Like that's I'm sure that even sensical type questions that make sense to ask. And like those are the type of things I do. Like like Doovid has toured tens of facilities in Metro Detroit laboratories. I have the pictures on my Facebook. I've shown those numerous times on Week in Review. So that's like the type of question I wouldn't have any problem asking. Like, can I get a tour of the laboratory? Can I take pictures? Can I film? Or something like that. I wouldn't have any problem asking that. And I doubt it would have caused any problem if she did agree to come on Week in Review, or even if I just called her. I mean, then when I called her, she came on Week in Review to publicly answer these questions, versus if I just called her on the phone
I
and
think
got
most
her.
people don't want to come on a live stream, just generally.
Yeah, I, mean, I didn't even ask her, but I was saying that that would make it much. If she was willing to come on my live stream, that would make it much more likely that I would think it would be a worthwhile investment to travel to go to the conference. Even if she said like, no, I can't go on your live stream. It still might be worthwhile to pay to go to the conference, but certainly would make it much more likely I would pay to go to the conference. And I mean, certainly, like in Week in Review, like we don't have that kind of audience. Like I had hoped, my hope actually was that there would have been like a Week in Review crew that we would have met in Italy. In that sense, maybe like Abby would have came on, and I would have been like, no, I got like a crew of like an entourage of people that want to go to the conference, and like can you answer these questions and help us, like basic logistical questions. And she's running the conference. I wouldn't be surprised if she would have done it because like we would have been buying tickets, but like that wasn't the reaction I got from you, and no one on my side, my Discord or Week in Review reached out to me and was like, "Yeah, Doovid sounds interesting. I'm thinking of going to the conference." So that would have been the type feedback I was hoping for. Like even though I never
I'm
met
guessing
Daryl.
most people have that the cost of that conference sponsored by the agency they work for?
But if it was like Anders or Daryl or Skyworks. So ironically, Claire messaged me after that show and was like, "I'll go to the conference with you," but I didn't think it was worth paying for Claire to go to the conference because she doesn't have anything to do with the science of consciousness. But if it's like Daryl or Anders or something, it was like, "Yeah, I think I want to go to the conference too." That would have definitely made it much more likely that I would have went, even though I never met Daryl or Anders. Yeah, I mean, it's not about blame or right or wrong. It's just logistical feedback where something makes sense or doesn't make sense. And I don't know anything about Daryl or Anders, but they're regular viewer and week in review. And if they, sent me a message and be like, Doooovid, I'm going to the conference, like I'll go. Uh, we could split a hotel room or something like that. That would make it exponentially more likely I would have went.
Well, no one wants to meet up with you in person, unfortunately. Maybe think about being friendlier.
Well, I said no. Actually, quite a few people want to meet up with me in person, and I'm not even mentioning God forbid, I've been in contact with people over the last few weeks about other ventures that I'm in Metro Detroit, but no, I mean, thank God, people. I network and meet up with people in person all the time, and there might be activities that I'm getting involved in that people who follow my content will see soon. That doesn't really have anything to do with Week in Review. But I'm talking about meeting up in person. I'm talking about meeting up in Italy at a conference.
So a bunch of people from the internet want to meet up with you in person.
No, people from Metro Detroit.
So anyone from the internet?
From my streaming, people that I've been connected to from
People from Metro Detroit from streaming. Is that it?
people from
people who are in the area.
Well, I would be connected people that are in. I mean, I mentioned because since I'm doing the screen share, uh, and people who follow me on Twitter probably already saw this. Gunnar Lindblom, Gunnar Detroit. I was in the chat on his show the other day, and ironically, it was Ultra Testosterone, and from the Luke Ford that set me up and tweeted Gunnar Lindblom's from Detroit. He is making a movie in Hollywood. He's got a radio show in Detroit. I had never heard of him, and I was referred to him from, say, like, ironically, I'm sure you've seen Ultra Testosterone, right?
Of course.
You know who I'm referring to. He occasionally,
Yeah, the like troll account in Luke's chat.
well, I mean, maybe he's a troll, but yeah, I mean, like, he's got a wrench on Gunnar Lindblom, and I never heard of Gunnar Lindblom, so he started tweeting me and Gunnar Lindblom. So I started talking to Gunnar Lindblom, and he's got a radio show. He's on the radio in Metro Detroit, and we've been talking. So I might meet up with him. You can see he's sharing my comment in the chat on the stream there. So that was Ultra Testosterone. That people probably seen him, and he's in my chat. You call him like a little bit of a. I mean, he does. I don't call him like a troll, but like a spammer. He always does his like, what the F is up, bros, Trump 24. But he has some intelligent content, and actually he's usually been quite complimentary of Jennifer and her intelligence, and he has interest in reincarnation. But he was kind of like a spammer. But I think relatively.
Yeah, I said troll. I should have said spammer.
I think he's actually relatively, probably of like the people from the Luke Fortis stream, one of the people that have been more respectful to you, at least in terms of recognizing that you're intelligent, and he's got tendency towards belief in reincarnation.
Yes, well, I suppose ironic recognition of intelligence is a recognition of intelligence of a sort.
Um, but it was saying like I never heard of this guy Gunnar Lindblom, but he's from Detroit, so uh, Ultra Testosterone started tweeting me at him, and we've been speaking, so we might meet up. I mean, we haven't streamed together. Maybe he even mentioned like he's actually on AM radio in Metro Detroit. He even mentioned maybe having me on his show. That didn't happen yet, but I just like just mentioned that happened this week. I wasn't even going to mention it on Week in Review, but it's saying like, yeah, it's possible that I would have met up with him. I wouldn't have minded. I never heard of the guy. Someone tweeted him out. He watches me, and I would have met up with him in Detroit. I still might meet up with him next time. I mean, he's not in Metro Detroit. He's a few hours away, but he comes to Metro Detroit, and he's got a radio show in Metro Detroit that he does from his home that's a few hours away. But no, I get messages every week. Thank God I get new people on my Discord every week. A lot of them kind of like trolly, but I get messages, private messages, and very few of my viewers are in Metro Detroit. But I would meet up with anybody, and still possible that. But no, I'm not so concerned about my personality. I think that we'll see what happens. But in terms of it's a large financial commitment. Like I don't really think it's my personality. So I'm saying if Daryl or Anders,
Personality is what makes people attracted to each other.
what might be, I was saying that if Daryl, likes Week in Review, he watches every week, and then he was like, or Dark Matters, watches Affluent, uh, um, so Nan, no, he's familiar with Gunner. But I'm saying if one of your regular viewers like Affluent, Dark Matter, or Daryl was like, yeah, I think sounds interesting. I want to go to the conference. Um, that would have made it a lot more likely. And I'm not saying like like I don't know Daryl. It could be that like I don't even know what country he's in. But we wouldn't have had to hang out like just if he went to the conference, we might have met and not liked each other, or had like but still it would have made me more likely to go. And he wouldn't have went to meet me. He would have went to attend the conference. In that sense, like we could have sat next to each other and talked, and even shared a hotel room or had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or we could have just attended the conference and like said hi, and basically both attended the conference largely on our own. Like I assume that like if Jennifer if Jennifer went, we probably would have been strategic about it. Might have split up like and went to different sessions. Like I would assume like probably we would have sat next to each other in like the conference hall. But
I would
even that's
probably need some type of a constant escort if that wasn't already obvious, and preferable a bunch of escorts.
oh, I wouldn't need an escort. I'm just saying that, but even that it
You're
wouldn't
not
have
me.
mattered.
Did you know that? Oh my god, that's weird.
I mean, like if we went to the conference and like didn't even say hi to each other or said hi to each other, like, oh, Jennifer, good to meet you finally, and then like we didn't speak to each other the rest of the conference. I mean, it could have worked out like that too. But that's even that case, it would have made me
Uh,
more likely to go. So if Anders or something or Bubblegum, was like, yeah, like Science of Consciousness conference sounds really interesting, and like we met and shook hands, and then just like saw each other from the distance in the the lecture room, and that's it, or at like the communal dinner, and we sat on opposite sides and just like looked at each other from a distance, it still would have made it more likely that I would have went.
there's no chance I'd go unless the agreement was you're a buffer between me and literally anyone trying to talk to me at any time that I don't want to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, to
So
me,
I think I'm way too high maintenance for you. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, that'd be too difficult. Like, I don't need any maintenance really. And so, like, I
Well,
don't know,
that must be wonderful.
like,
Blessings.
I don't know, like Bubble or Daryl or something, like if they're the type wouldn't need any maintenance or something like that. Go to the conference and maybe financially, like to split a hotel room would have been uh big financial difference. Like taking out your own hotel room, like splitting a hotel room could have meant the difference of over $1,000. Um, but even not at that, just saying that there was someone else that would have known at the conference would have made it significantly more likely I would have went. And even like, okay, next year, like Bubble, if he's American, like I don't know anything about Daryl, where he's from, but like but like to just go to another country, another place, uh, and even just to know the demeanor, like Week in Review, that's the type person that watches Week in Review that would have considered going to the Science of Consciousness conference. So it's like Jennifer's not the type person. I mean, she did go to the Science of Consciousness conference last year, but I mean, generally, she's not the type person that
I don't
is.
think I said very much during that. I may have said a couple comments in chat, but I don't think so.
But I'm saying that it didn't turn out that the type people are watching Week in Review are the type people that would go to the Science of Consciousness conference.
Well, yeah, conferences are very sparsely attended. I mean, it'd be a miracle. There's probably less than 200 people at the Science of Consciousness conference.
Yeah, like 200-300 people, I think. And maybe Italy might even be smaller.
Daryl, again, disagreeing, don't give a fuck. Person I'm hanging out with, piling on to some opinion from some random, that's where I take issue. Please stop lying and saying that I said something I didn't. Hurts my feelings.
Like DebateCon. Like I might go to DebateCon if I were one of the debaters. I couldn't imagine going to DebateCon as a audience member. Like if
I could sooner see myself going to that than the Science of Consciousness conference.
wasn't like I would go to the Science Conscious conference. I would like be studious about it. I would take it seriously and learn something. I wouldn't go to the DebateCon. I don't think I'd learn anything from that. Wouldn't interest me. I just got this in the mail. I put upstairs like McCormick in Chicago, the 3D printing conference. Maybe like Gandalf or something. I mean, maybe I'll go to the 3D printing conference in Chicago. Like I lost contact with Gandalf, and I even recommended that would have been, when he was trying streaming, that he should do IRL streams at the McCormick Conference Center in Chicago. I have a sister in Chicago where I would be able to stay in her apartment, which I don't know about parking, but might make a difference because lodging is expensive in urban areas. But that remotely possible, like I would go to the 3D printing conference in Chicago at McCormick coming up in a few months. I doubt it. But that would be also like if like Gandalf was around and like it made sense, like, oh, we're going to meet up and stream the 3D printing conference at McCormick. That would definitely make it more likely. And even if there were a few people in the Chicago area, like I said, when we first did Week in Review, that's what I even mentioned that I wanted to move. I wanted to connect. That's why I mentioned on Claire about Daniel Sinkowitz, that healthy streaming is in addition to IRL activities, and not it's a supplement to your real life. It's not a replacement for it. So streaming like that should be a supplement to my real life activities. And I'd even mentioned Week in Review, like Luke Ford, Babs had originally had like Luke Ford meetups in New York. Brundle, my roommate, um, who's the other guy? I mean, Brundle Babs, my roommate, um, Glib, met up in person. Glib and Babs and my roommate met up multiple times in person. They even streamed. I don't know if you remember that when Glib and my roommate and Babs did
Your
IRL stream.
roommate or the account known as your roommate,
The account Doovid's roommate.
but not actual literal roommate. Okay, right.
But I
I think so.
don't if you remember when Babs and Doovid's roommate met up and did an IRL stream.
Vaguely, yeah.
But yeah, that was originally that was the direction I wanted to go in streaming. I wanted that to supplement IRL activity, and I even started streaming with John Wolf, and like John Wolf is also a Gunnar Lindblom guy, um, like mob talk type stuff. And I'd even mentioned that to Gunnar about. I mean, he's a more famous personality than I am by far. That I would work together for him in terms of organizing tours and IRL events. That if he did like a book tour, he's got a popular book that sold um, tens of thousands of copies. That I would actually work for him organizing book tours. But that's actually the type thing that I had interest in. But I don't have a book or a book tour, and I don't have a crew of people. Like I don't think I might be able to have like a meetup, and it's still possible. Like I don't think I have like Gondorf. Um, Week in Review did not turn out that way, unfortunately. So my own streams, I don't have a big enough audience. So, but that's still the direction I would like to move in with my streaming. Like I would like, oh, I'm going to be at McCormick's for the convention, and people who are interested will meet up at the convention, and then maybe we'll also meet up at like a venue, a private apartment, hotel room, or bar, restaurant, and maybe stream something, do IRL something like that. That would be the direction I was hoping to move into. I haven't had any success like that.
I guess
Although
meeting up
decent.
with Luke Ford and Sawmill streaming, that wouldn't be too cool.
Well, if I'd have to, I don't think it paid to go to Los Angeles. I don't have any business going to California. I sang last week going. I didn't prepare a song this week. I sang last week going to California, the Led Zeppelin song. But and I don't think it'd be a worthwhile expenditure of money to go to California, like just to meet up with Luke Ford, because I don't really have any business. If the Science of Consciousness conference was in Los Angeles or something, like if I had some sort of reasonable reason that I was going to go to California, I'd probably meet up with Luke Ford and you'll go to synagogue or grab something to eat, meet him at his apartment and stream something. You're like, oh, like I'm live now with Luke Ford. Like, yeah, I would probably, but I don't think it paid to go to California just to meet Luke Ford. And if Luke Ford, I told him if he came to Detroit, like I'd pick him up to the airport, but I don't think Luke Ford has no reason to come to Detroit. And I don't think Luke Ford's not going to come to Detroit just to meet me. And I don't, if Luke Ford had a book, if there were a Luke Ford fan club in Detroit, and like people paid for his airfare, and there was like an event for him to speak at, he would probably come to Detroit. But like he's not that popular. I wouldn't be able to organize that. Saying like if Luke Ford, I could arrange like a speaking gig at like a synagogue and a bookstore, and there were a bunch of people that read his books and wanted autographs, and we're going to pay for his airfare. Like he would probably come to Detroit. Um, but like no, that's not the case. Gunnar Lindblom, I don't know the guy, but he is probably borderline that popular, and then even borderline where he would even pay to take an assistant with him. So it'd be just Detroit, like if he, but that if he was borderline popular enough where he would go to some location and have like a book tour, speaking gig, and that he would pay for me to go with him to assist him. So I don't know that that's pretty unlikely, but that would be something I would consider doing. And I would consider doing that with Jennifer too, but like that's not happening. Like even though I'm not, so to say, like a entropist, but if Jennifer like had like enough fans in the U.S. for a speaking tour and wanted Doovid to come along and assist her, and certainly if she was like selling books or getting paid enough that she could pay for my expenses, like yeah, I would come along and assist at the programs. But that hasn't happened.
Well, I'm not very good at writing, as it turns out. But it's coming along slowly. Wait, okay, you know, chip away at it.
Yeah, so like I would rather do that for something that interests me. Like I might do it for someone like Gunnar Lindblom, even though the topic doesn't really interest me that much. It's not my topic. Like you like mob talk, mafia type stuff. Um, I might do it for that anyways. Like I mean, it interests me a little bit, but that's not really my topic. Like I would just do that because it would be like a professional experience. Like it's, if he paid me to do it, I would probably do it. Like but it's not. I would be professional about it, but that's not particularly a topic that interests me. I mean, it interests me like a little bit, but it wouldn't be. That's not my dream to like go around like touring, like promoting some mafia books. I would be more
Sounds
interested
like
in.
it could be fun
Well, any tour could be fun.
if you want it to be, but you just don't sound like really into it.
Well, I did. I mean, say I did music promotion, and I promoted bands that I didn't really like. Also, I mean, generally, like I work with bands that I actually like, but like I also work with bands I didn't like that much, and like okay, so like I was still professional, and I sat through their music in their set, even though like I didn't really like their music or like their personalities, but I was still professional about it. And there are a few other bands where I actually did like their music and their personalities. It was much more enjoyable. Um, I served rabbis. Most of the rabbis I served were rabbis I liked, but occasionally I served rabbis who well, I didn't like, but like I didn't really have any attraction towards them or their style or their message, but they asked for my service and I serve them. I mean, here in Metro Detroit, like I basically say yes anytime a rabbi asks me for something. There's certain rabbis I like more than others, but even if rabbis I don't have any affinity towards them, their style, if they ask me something, I still say yes. Like so, if there was, I have certain rabbis I really like, and if they like wanted to do events together and asked me to be their assistant, it would be much more enjoyable than if a rabbi didn't like that much. I applied for a job even for a rabbi I didn't even like that much. I'm not saying I didn't dislike him, but I just wanted to be a rabbi's assistant, and he was hiring for a rabbi's assistant. I didn't get the job, but so I would have been the rabbi's assistant just because I wanted to be a rabbi's assistant, even though it wasn't like the specific rabbi I wanted to serve. So I'm saying in that sense, like, yeah, I mean, I could see working for Gunnar Lindblom, like, but that's not, because I mean, work is work, and especially event organization promotion. Um, I liked ISKCON. I like the Hare Krishnas. Like I did the event organization promotion for ISKCON. I like ISKCON. Some of their leaders I like more than others, or gurus I like more than others. But I basically equally served and did the event promotion, no matter who it was, whether I liked them more or not. But the ones I liked more, I would have been more likely to help them organize more events or locally. So like I haven't went in a few years, but when ISKCON people come to Detroit, they typically have a big event at the main temple in Detroit, an event at the temple in Farmington Hills. Sometimes they go to the preaching center in Ypsilanti. Occasionally they'll make an event at University of Michigan, people's houses, and so if it's like a guru that I have more affinity to, I might go towards all their events and help, like get there early, set up, stay there late, put things away, speak to people, and whatever I can to assist at all of the events. Um, if it's someone I don't really have any affinity to, I would have helped the event at the main temples. If I was at the temple helping out, I would have helped out at the temple for their event, fully professional and did whatever they asked me. But I might not have like got there early and stayed late, or like extra work. Um, let alone if it was someone that maybe I would even help set up my own event, where I would have been part of let's do this whole extra event. So they're coming and they're doing a series of events, and I got I'm pushing. I got a new event, an extra added date and event that I'm one of the organizers of. Like when I was at University of Michigan, I did that a few times. We're saying like there was another stop that was added to their trip, and I was one of the people that organized it and got there, helped book it, helped advertise it, um, even drove the person, picked them up, dropped them off, got there early, set up, cleaned up afterwards, booked the room, so on and so on, like that. Like I know how to do event promoting. That's why I was talking to Gunnar Lindblom. I never even heard of the guy till people in the chat like were mentioning to me, but saying like, yeah, I know how to do that. I could do that for Gunnar Lindblom. Probably like rent a venue, um, just the basic logistics of event promotion for something that I'm not really connected to. I mean, that's what Jennifer's saying. Like, yeah, like I would like if like Doovid and Jennifer had an annual consciousness event and all the big names were coming to, but that's not the case. So I would have went to the Science of Consciousness conference as a simple attendee and just been a good attendee and listened and tried really hard to understand what they're saying and understand what they're saying, and get a few selfies and uh, handshakes and maybe an interview or two. That would have been sufficient. That I would have that would have been worth it for me. Uh, but like yeah, that's why I would like to it would be fantastical, the likelihood that, or that Week in Review would somehow move into an IRL conference, saying that's in the realm of possibility, but it's unlikely.
What's in the realm?
That Week in Review would evolve into
A
some
conference.
sort of annual conference.
It's not the
That,
worst idea that's ever been had. Have to have some sort of a format for that. But I kind of like that there's no format. Just do like the free flow improv stuff. But anyway.
well, no, because I mean that's money and due diligence. Like conference, you got to book a hall and put out money and sell tickets. So it wouldn't be free flow at all, and it'd probably fail. Like no one would come. It wouldn't be like God forbid. So it's not practical. I mean, the future or something like that. You're saying that the audience isn't big enough and no one would show, no one would pay. There wouldn't be a possibility, even an online conference. But the logistics of like Abby and Stuart Hameroff, where they book a venue, sell tickets, arrange hotel deals, transportation, uh, all have their own web page and various things, a Zoom stream, and there'd be actually be logistics and a financial uh, output that it was like a goal, dream of the future, unlikely. That, but like to be goal oriented and see possible scenarios for the future. Like no, I mean, I think it's unlikely that like I'm gonna call up David Chalmers and be like, okay, like me and Jennifer are organizing a conference. Will you be one of our speakers? Or even if I was, say like had $5,000 to pay him, like maybe do it if I paid him $5,000. I don't have $5,000 to pay him, or like that. Even as they would sell tickets, they'd get a name, they'd pay a name to do, and think that like I'd be selling tickets. like some conference, and it costs hundreds of dollars, and someone would buy tickets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's
Festivals.
professionalism. It's just something, possibility, and that would be. Oh, because I still have the screen share on. Like I did, because it's the holiday or Monday. There's no reason to stream so long today, so I'm not going to read anything. But some intellectualism. This was the Stanford Encyclopedia Atomism from the 17th to the 20th century. It's actually pretty interesting. Possibly even return to next week. Um, I'm not sure if you had much of a week in review. I mean, I did actually write my essay on chess. I didn't post it yet. There was a big snowstorm Friday, and so I was rushing to have my essay ready by um, Friday to distribute to the coaches at the Detroit Institute of Arts. And then there was a big snowstorm and it got canceled. So my mom actually looked at it and made a bunch of corrections, and it's almost publishable. Like I probably still make a few more corrections on it, but I have an essay on chess. I'm not sure if it's that interesting for week in review. We could also wait till next week till after I make a few more corrections or publish it, but it's basically finished. I did make a little more edits on my high birth, low birth, but I still haven't published that. But maybe I'll work on that a little bit more, and then when I finally publish it, we'll go over that. Um, Again, I think those might be more interesting in terms like those. I'm working on somewhat putting together my unique thoughts, and you might have something interesting to say. I'm hoping. But it's going to take more work, and I'm weaving together different ideas that I think are unique. I don't think other people have done yet. So that's the type thing like unique
I
scholarship.
noticed the high birth, low birth thing. To kind of back burner that, or no? Yes,
The what?
high birth, low birth thing. Did you back burner that at all?
No, my mom went over it, and I made edits on it. And my mom thought it needed more work, and I agreed it needed more work, and I put it aside. I still have it open on my desktop, and I've made quite a few edits on it from when we looked at it last. But it still needs more work, and it needs some sort of organizational principle. But I mean, it's basically a completed essay. It's not that good right now, so I want to keep on working on it because I don't think there's any benefit to putting it out right away. But
Well, you don't want to
it's
dilute your
basically a
other. You don't
completed
want to
essay.
dilute your bigger message, do you?
Um, well, I don't know if I have a bigger message. It's a completed essay I could put out, but it could use more work. It's not as coherent as it should be, and it needs more work. But it's a completed essay, meaning say it's a full essay, introduction, conclusion, sections. It's edited. It doesn't have any grammatical mistakes, but it still needs more work. So I plan on working on it more and releasing it. And I don't know if I have a message. I haven't put out a essay for a long time, so I will release that one probably in the next few weeks. But I have a chess one that I might even release tomorrow or the next day. I mean, if we want, we could go over it now. Um,
Sure, sounds great. Yeah, it's a chess one. Not much mention of the high birth, low birth stuff, and that is what I meant.
there's no mention of that in my chess
Mm-hmm.
essay. My essays are almost all topical. and this one would be a different. This one would be a different path in my writing, where it'd be more directed towards people that I work with IRL. And I was actually thinking that if the person that I work with um, appreciated the work, that I would actually consider writing a book, because I had so many, like, in a future essay, that I think I could even write a book on the subject, and it might even be able to collaborate with a big name. Um,
Awesome.
that I think I even put his picture, one of my main pictures on my blog. Sunil Wardamantry here is, I mean, he's in New York, but he's a famous man. He's in charge of multiple chess programs in New York, and a senior advisor for the Detroit program, and he's the stepfather of Hikura Nakamura, the most famous, one of the most famous chess players in the world. So that even remotely, the possibility that I could work together with him, or even get an article that he would. So I was thinking that I would. That's why I want to work on this paper and get it to a higher level of quality. But I would give this to Coach Fight, who I coach with, who is actually the head of chess in Detroit Public Schools after school programs, also robotics. But that I would try to submit this essay specifically for chess coaches in Metro Detroit, as like a tool to help train chess coaches. So I wrote this article not so much for a week in review or my blog or regular viewers, but for chess coaches in Detroit, and that maybe I would work together, like co-author articles or a book with Coach Fight or even Sunil Ordamatri, so that that's why I work with this essay. I would give this to Coach Fight and see what he thinks, and if he likes it, um, well, I would submit it to a few people in Metro Detroit. But if Coach Fight liked it, I would maybe submit it to multiple more coaches here in Detroit, and maybe forward it to Sunil Wardamantry in Detroit, in New York, and actually mention him in my essay. But this would be more niche towards chess coaches, and like towards like a guidebook for teaching chess to children. That I would consider writing a book that wouldn't be that would be specifically a guidebook for teaching chess to children. You want to read it?
Well, that actually sounds super realistic. So great.
Yeah, I mean, chess coaching is probably my most successful of all my activities. Even like, God forbid, I think you were showing me some like people talking trash about me and something, but they were somewhat respectful of me, like as a chess player.
Mm. All right, I'll go ahead. Chess is a pedagogical tool. 4 basic concepts. Chess is one of the most popular games in the world. It's estimated 1 out of 5 people globally occasionally plays recreational chess. Tournament chess is more niche and popular among children as an extracurricular activity. Many schools have chess clubs. Sometimes chess is one of the more popular school activities. Urban areas commonly have leagues with regional, state, and national scholastic tournaments, giving excitement to children to compete as teams, travel, and meet other kids in their area, even nationally. Besides the competitive aspect, chess has also emerged as a popular method to teach children basic thinking skills. As I detailed in Mystical Approaches to the Meaning of Chess, historically chess originated as a priestly game, a form of divination. Chess became popular in the West as a gambling game and method of mediating group conflict. But most importantly, chess serves as a method to teach children basic thinking skills and moral reasoning. Because chess originated as a religious game, the majority of the lessons of chess are in the realm of morals and ethics. As the expression, chess is life. However, chess is also useful for general thinking skills, leading to the popular use of chess in schools as a pedagogical tool. I refer to chess as a preacher's prop, meaning the purpose of coaching chess is to preach a positive image, not necessarily the production of expert chess players. I maybe just mute you because there's a bit of sound coming through. Chess is a means, not an end. Often, a religious figure or teacher will teach how to play chess for the purpose of using chess as a metaphor for important life lessons. Consider prison chess programs or teaching a troubled youth. Chess as a method to help them make better life decisions. Chess's spiritual character make chess unique as a preacher prop to express spiritual concepts such as sacrifice, karma, action dash reaction, consequence of decision, looking at things from other people's perspective, long term versus short term planning, and more. Topics I hope to cover in a separate essay. These spiritual lessons can be taught in a non sectarian or secular way, as chess is a universal game, likely arising from Hinduism, but currently formalized into a Christian form. The spiritual lessons of chess are universal and do not have to be connected to any religion or specific belief. In public education, the cognitive skills aspect is emphasized, often in relation to math and science. I coach together with Coach Kevin Veit of the Detroit City Chess Club, hosted by the Detroit Institute of Arts. Coach Veit started as a math teacher, voluntarily creating an after-school chess club and team. Just as many chess clubs are started as after-school programs by math teachers, even though chess clubs might most commonly be affiliated with math class. Chess coaches come from all disciplines and backgrounds. The game has universal appeal, and chess can be just as useful as an art, history, or political science class. Recently, chess has been incorporated into the curriculum, not just as an after school activity, like athletics and team sports, where the pedagogical purpose is not teaching the sport itself, but fitness, health, exercise, teamwork, sportsmanship, and other important life lessons derived from sports. Similarly, chess has unique elements that can teach important life skills to children. In this essay, I want to focus on the specific aspects of chess that make it a method to teach children basic concepts. In a separate essay, I hope to cover specific concepts of chess as an educational tool for mathematics, geometry, and scientific reasoning. But here we'll focus on 4 universal educational concepts applicable to any discipline. Teaching chess to children. I'll demonstrate the pedagogical uses of chess by exemplifying 4 basic concepts: goals, progress, coordination, and efficiency. As a chess coach, I generally follow the method of Sunil Weeramantry in Demystifying Chess, a thinking skills workshop for teachers. One of Sunil's main methods is to break chess down into simpler components and the creation of training drills for the individual components. Training drill I use most often is mating with the king and queen versus a lone king, and will demonstrate how these major concepts of goals, progress, coordination, and efficiency are all necessary to checkmate with a king and queen. At the Detroit Institute of Arts, Coach Veit and I, and some of the other coaches, employ Sunil's methods according to our various styles. In this essay, I'll explain how these concepts are not only necessary to master basic chess skills, specifically checkmating with a king and queen versus a lone king, but can be generalized to help students approach any discipline. Chess itself is relatively simple, and even a child, sometimes as young as 3 or 4, can learn the game. By 8 years old, almost any child, regardless of cognitive skills, can learn the rules of the game and play. Younger children's learning depends on concentration levels, and concentration is another skill gained from chess. An interested adult can learn the rules of the game and be playing in less than 10 minutes. Nevertheless, chess strategy is infinite in complexity and interesting as a lifetime pursuit to increase skills and deeper understanding. There are only 6 different pieces for each player: 1 king, 1 queen, 2 knights, bishops, and rooks, and 8 pawns. For 16 pieces totaling 32 between the 2 players on an 8 board with 64 squares, alternating between 2 colors. The 6 pieces have simple geometric patterns of how they move. The goal of the game is to checkmate the opponent's king, which means attacking the king in a way that the king has no method to escape attack. The game is over at checkmate, not the actual capture of the king. All in all, besides the movement of the pieces, there are less than 10 rules to the game of chess. So conceivably, a sharp child with good concentration can pick up the rules in a few brief sittings. Okay, might need to take a little break here. I'm getting a bit of motion sickness, but yeah, if you could take over, that'd be great. You're actually muted. You have to unmute yourself. I just muted you because there's a bit of background noise coming through. Okay.
Most children require a few weeks of practice with their peers until they've mastered all the movements of the pieces and rules. After learning the rules, children can play, improve by trial and error, copying their opponent's strategies, chess books, coaching, or the countless online resources available. Truly mastering the game is a lifetime pursuit. In a classroom setting, chess might be divided into 13-week lesson plan, with all the students knowing how to play the game within the first few classes and the rest focusing on more complex strategies. Any teacher, no matter the discipline, can generalize the skills from chess and use chess as a metaphor to their subject matter. Training drill: mating with a king and queen, mating with a king queen versus lone king. Probably the most useful training drill is mating with the king and queen versus the lone king. This is often taught in conjunction with mating with 2 rooks versus the lone king, and mating with a king and rook versus the lone king, to finally the more difficult mating with a king and 2 bishops versus the lone king. Mating with 2 bishops versus the lone king is a skill that usually takes many months to master, creating a threshold that most casual players never reach. Students who quickly master mating with 2 bishops is a heuristic for natural talent and a sign that a child understands the game enough to defeat most adults who have never played competitive chess. But anyone with effort and a few months can master mating with a king and 2 bishops versus a lone king, including young children. In an introductory course of 10 lessons, all the students can be expected to master mating with a king and queen, 2 rooks, and the king and rook versus the lone king. In a single lesson, a good coach could teach the movement of the pieces, the majority of the rules, demonstrating checkmate with a king and queen versus a lone king, and allowing a new chess player to try it. I plan to expand more on Sunil Wardamantri's methods in demystifying chess as thinking skills workshop for teachers in a series of essays. Here I want to emphasize the universal lessons that are necessary to fully master mating with a king and queen versus a lone king. Just a few minor typos here. It's going to need a little more editing. Chess is a competitive game whose simple goal is to win by checkmating the opponent's king, hence often fun and exciting for children, as opposed to basic cognitive skills whose immediate use may be unclear. Here, new chess skills can be put to immediate use, namely winning a game of chess. A related topic for further discussion is the major theories of child's cognitive development, such as Piaget, in relation to these basic concepts and at what ages children can be expected to understand. Stages of cognitive development are more important for chess coaches in elementary school, as by middle school, all children can be expected to understand strategical concepts related to chess. For a teacher who uses chess as a pedagogical tool, it is just a matter of universalizing the concept to their subject matter or general advice for students. I will choose here the 4 universal concepts of goals, progress, coordination, and efficiency that can be applied to any discipline or important life decisions. 4 basic concepts: goals, progress, coordination, and efficiency. Each educator or chess coach can develop his own lexicon of useful concepts depending on his style and relationship to the student. Often children first learn chess from their father, grandfather, uncle, or family friend who play an active role in the student's development throughout their lifetime. Chess can be a great tool for parents and grandparents to pass on timeless wisdom to the next generation, notably as a preacher's prop specific to getting children to make good life decisions and understand long term goals versus short term goals. As mentioned, chess originated as a spiritual game, and many of these lessons are the type ideas stressed by parents, family members, or religious leaders who advise the child throughout their whole lifetimes. Or even a teacher of a subject matter for one semester can impart these concepts and utilize them in relation to classwork for the time they teach a student. A scholastic chess coach typically has an advisory role for a few year period, such as elementary, middle, or high school. Students whose main extracurricular activity is chess often find their chess coach their most significant life mentor. So let me demonstrate the relationship of understanding goals, progress, coordination, and efficiency in the teaching drill of mating with a king and queen versus a lone king. Training drill. Checkmate is how you win at chess with the purpose of the game. Sorry, checkmate is how you win at chess, the purpose of the game, the goal. I have done this drill hundreds, probably thousands of times when I teach chess. Mate with the king and queen is usually the third thing I teach, first being the six pieces and how they move, second, the starting position of the game and the few rules like check and castling, and the third, checkmate, exemplified with the king and queen versus a lone king. To some extent, the ability to mate with a king and queen is a prerequisite to playing the game, as it is the simplest clear demonstration of checkmate. The concept of progress is directly related to goals. Mating with a king and queen versus the lone king generally takes 3 stages, as mate can only be delivered on the side of the board with the king in opposition to the opponent's king. Opposition is a key concept referring to when the kings are directly opposing each other with one square in between, an extremely important strategic concept related to the visual uh, spatial aspects of chess. I would return more to opposition and geometric patterns in a future essay on chess as a pedagogical tool specific to mathematics and geometry. So if you start with the lone king in the center of the board, in order to deliver checkmate, first the king has to be forced to the side of the board. The king brought in uh, then the king brought in opposition uh, to the opponent's king, and finally the queen placed directly in front of the opposing king, defended by her own king or checking along the rank or file. This is checkmate with the king attacked and no way to get out, leading to the concept of coordination. Checkmate with a king and queen necessitates the coordination of activities of the king and queen together. The queen on her own cannot checkmate, but can stalemate, as usually students will cause stalemate multiple times before checkmate. Most children of any age have an intuitive understanding of coordination between the king and queen in relation to their father and mother. Chess is a symbolic game, as the rules only specify the geometric patterns of how the pieces move, but not the meaning of the game or interpretation of the pieces. In this symbolic aspect, chess is associated with artistic and creative thinking. Coordination of pieces in chess is purely of a geometric nature, but the symbolic nature of chess is what makes chess such a powerful pedagogic tool. Complex chess strategy often centers around coordination of multiple pieces, as do the chess metaphors that educators use to help children navigate difficult, multifaceted life decisions.
You want me to keep going? It's really long. Like, just looking at how far the bar is now, it's
Well,
crazy how long it is.
you go.
Once the student learns to mate with a king and queen versus a lone king, the next important concept is efficiency, which is directly related to the concept of goals and progress. Usually, after letting the student try checkmate for a period of time, I will comment you're not making progress, as often as people tend to want to check the king over and over again with the queen, as opposed to the superior strategy of trapping the king with the queen, which I will cover in depth in geometric skills. The student understanding that trapping the king with the queen instead of the more intuitive checking the king represents a paradigm shift and threshold in the development of a deeper level of understanding chess strategy. But sufficient for here is that in order to mate with the king and queen versus lone king, first the king has to be forced and trapped on this side of the board. So progress is easy to measure and understand in terms of whether the king is being forced to the side of the board. Geometrically, that's limiting the available section of the board to the lone king till it's trapped on the side of the board, to which the opposing king can be brought into opposition and the queen can deliver checkmate. The concept of efficiency relates to all the moves working together in a form of progress towards the goal of checkmate. Understanding the concept of efficiency is crucial for academic success, use of classroom time and study habits, and a great chess metaphor for pedagogical purposes. For younger students, I will often give them reasonable time to figure out each drill on their own. Due to lack of understanding of making progress, the student will just keep checking the king without actually forcing the king to the side of the board. Or we'll get the king to the side of the board, but let the king out by failing to properly coordinate the king and queen. After they temporarily give up, I'll offer a hint in the form of explaining the concepts of goals, progress, coordination, and efficiency, often in the form of asking the child, do you know what goals are? Or do you know what progress is? And letting the student define the term. Even most elementary students recognize the terms and can give some reasonable definition. Elementary students are usually familiar with term coordination, often in relationship to sports like hand-eye coordination or dribbling in basketball, or in relationship to group activities like choir dance, where all the people in the group coordinate doing the same activity at the same time. Efficiency is a more complicated concept that children sometimes have difficulty defining. Mastery of the understanding of efficiency is the completion of the mating with king and queen versus lone king drill, or most of the drills. Once the student completes the drill successfully, repeat the drill till they get it right every time. Drill is only complete when they get it right every time in the most efficient way, by coordinating the king and queen with every single move, making progress towards the goal of checkmate. In this way, all four of these basic concepts, goals, progress, coordination, and efficiency, are part of completion of any of the drills, where the drill is completed only where the student gets it right every time in the most efficient manner. This is the general method of Sunil Weeramantree in Demystifying Chess, a thinking skills workshop for teachers where chess is broken down into components that can be taught and mastered through training drills one by one. Conclusion: generalizing the lessons of chess. I hope to add diagrams soon, especially where I focus on geometry and other cognitive skills related to long-term planning, such as visualization. Chess is also a great method to practice visualization skills by creating a mental image of the future state of the position and making calculations based on the future state. To properly employ chess strategy, one needs to think multiple moves into the future without moving the current position. The relationship of teaching chess to visualization skills is connected to short-term versus long-term decision-making, but also chess as an artistic and creative game. The majority of chess coaches and teachers are not exclusively interested in chess itself, but chess is a pedagogical tool, a means, not an end. Although the Detroit City Chess Club, this club, we also train pure chess for competitive purposes. Most coaches are more interested in giving over important life lessons in a way that children find interesting and are eager to learn. The life lessons from chess have diminishing returns in training for competitive play. Most of the important life lessons are imparted at the beginner level for pedagogical purposes. It makes no difference whether students ever compete at chess or play regularly, but more the lessons imparted to students through learning the game of chess and future metaphorical usage of the game of chess. Many children who are familiar with goals and progress in relationship to performing well in school might have a harder time internalizing long-term goals, hence the greatness of chess. With the simple goal of checkmate and easy methods and signposts to determine whether progress is being made, as well as a simplified way of showing more complex concepts like coordination and efficiency, as in school, a student needs to coordinate all this various skills and disciplines into making progress towards their life goals, preferably in the most efficient manner. Once a student of chess has mastered these four concepts, chess can be used as a metaphor specifically in a classroom setting for any subject or discipline where a teacher can make clear the goal of the class and what should be recognized as progress towards the goal. And once that objective has been met, how to coordinate the new skills with other skills with a generalized appreciation for working in an efficient manner, directly measured by the progress being made to agreed upon goals. In future essays, I plan on covering spiritual concepts learned through chess, skills specific to mathematical, geometric, and scientific thinking, and more detail on cognitive stages of development and what ages children can be expected to understand these concepts and incorporate them into long-term life goals.
Okay, so it still needs a little bit of work, but it was basically a complete essay. I might, I thought like I was going to go real quick and try to get it out and give it to some of the coaches I worked together with on Friday, but they ended up canceling it. And if I'd done that, it would have needed more editing. But I think that maybe they would have been able to benefit. But it was canceled, so hopefully I'll be able to polish it off and have a better, flowing, well-formed essay. So I a little bit more work. But
Felt like it should have been about 1/2 to 40% as long, given the amount of information in it. Like it felt really redundant.
Yeah, so I gotta probably figure a way out to determine like if I can cut quite a bit of it out.
Well,
Or
did you diagram it out?
No, I actually just started writing. I didn't write a flow chart.
Yeah, because it doesn't come across as being diagrammed out. Like most of your essays are way more organized than this. I think content-wise, this one's better, but structure-wise, it's worse. Which is fine, because I think if you actually continue to write this way, you will start liking ChatGPT, because it can correct for like a little bit this type of technical not greatness.
Yeah, I'll probably just edit it myself, and likely I might publish it next week, or if I get good work on it, even in the next few days. But this one's more directly to give to people I know. I'll put it on my blog if people read it. And USA Chess is what I'm known best for, even on my blog. So I might share it on Facebook, or personally with a few chess coaches I know online. So I'm no longer on Lead Chess. Might have done reasonably well on Lead Chess, but I think I'll better reach with this essay than my other essays, because I actually have an audience for bigger audience for chess than my other topics. But it needs quite a bit more work, so definitely gonna work on it. But at least
not
I have
that much work. It just needs to be tightened up a little bit.
Well, it needs editing, so I have a complete essay. Like the essay is complete, all the information that I want to put in, it's in it. It just needs editing, which is I have up here my other so this also I have a complete essay, 4,000 words. All the information I want to put in it is basically there, and it just needs editing. So that's a good sign. I have two complete essays that you need a significant amount of editing, but relatively they're complete essays. So felt good about that. Minimal progress.
Great. I see you have mine up there.
You sent this to me. Is this ChatGPT generated, or I know it's a lot of eyes?
It's chat. Yeah. It's a little bit different than what I've done so far. It's like training it. I don't know if you know anything about how it works to train train these models?
I haven't used ChatGPT. I mean, I know what training is, and if I haven't worked with ChatGPT to know how you train it. If I'm not even sure that you can train ChatGPT.
It's very limited, although it seems to be more than what it started with. So there's obviously huge limitations on what you can actually do. So I'm not saying this is like some whatever.
My understanding is that you can't train ChatGPT. It's already pre-trained. So like it went through a training procedure, and then it doesn't train off of your usage.
Well, it does. A minor amount, like not to a point where it can overwrite any of its core, directives or whatever. But yeah, you can train it. So I trained it with quite a bit, which is like explaining something to it, having it explain it back to me, correcting it, having it check again if it's right, correcting it, going back and forth on that level. And then asking it to write. In this case, I said, just talk about the differences between my philosophy, which is what I was trying to like explain to it with training data. Explain that difference between mine and Western philosophy, just like with our combo last week.
Yeah, it was actually semi-related messaging with Adam Green. I saw he's streaming at the same time, 7 o'clock tonight, on like a rabbi program with I guess his like counter Semitism purpose, but tonight's special episode was his interaction with a rabbi chat GPT for like ask the AI rabbi.
So maybe is that a special implementation of ChatGPT or its own thing?
I'm not sure if it's ChatGPT. It might be an alternative technology. It might be an Israeli page. So it's a AI rabbi. I'm not sure. I mean, he called it ChatGPT 3, but it might actually be an alternative technology than ChatGPT 3. But it's a form of machine learning trained program that is like you're talking to the Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe. So it's trained on the writings and teachings of the Lubavitch Rebbe, and you could interact like you're interacting with the Lubavitch Rebbe, and the training data is the teachings of the Lubavitch Rebbe. So it's similar to, like, I think I mentioned that on previous shows, that they have programs that have famous personalities that you could unlock and speak to. And I mentioned like it was controversial because, like, Hitler is one of them, but they have a program with the Lubavitch Rebbe. And so Adams was fooling around with talking to the Rebbe, and that was the content of his stream tonight. I might catch that later if anyone watches Adam Green. So you want me to read this?
I don't know. Like, was it one of those things where you didn't like it at all, or did you have some hope for it? Because to me, I was still like,
well, I could just read it either way. It looked readable. I mean, at least it had eyes. I mean, it looked.
I thought it sounded better, but I still wasn't totally sure on the structure. It's not that long though, luckily. Like, it's definitely nowhere near as long as yours. So, like, I can read it, or if you want to, it's all good.
Yeah, I could read this in one setting. It's not that long.
Thanks.
It's 30% as long as mine.
I think I'm like trying to, for most things, get it down to a single approximately length of an essay. And this is approximately it, because I realized, like, after a certain length, it's not an essay anymore. It's something else. Something, I don't want to say a novella, but something more. And I'm just like, I got to get this, in a sense, maybe write to myself for the amount of time I can focus on one of these essays, because some people write insanely long stuff, and it's like, wow.
Well, I was thinking of the chess that I would actually even maybe make it into a book. Like if I had chess diagrams.
Well, there's a lot there, but you would need to flesh that out, because there was times, like I was going to say when I was reading it, that it gave off textbook vibes. Like I
Well, that was
kind of
kind of what I was
expect to
thinking.
read that in textbook, and that's good because I'm looking to write a textbook also. So it's so much
What
fun to do diagrams for textbooks. Seriously, it's like that's why I've been putting it off so I don't like get too happy.
well, I mean, chess diagrams are a certain thing that it would be niche, where it would be, I mean, twofold. I would have be writing a text style book. I would have a handful of people that would likely have immediate use, coaches that I work together that you would be interested in the work and using it, and possibly like the creation, maybe not a textbook, but like a workbook that might be like 100 pages. So even if I cleaned that up, but if I added chess diagrams to that, like what I have there could be like 15 pages if it had actually a whole bunch of like miniature chess diagrams in it. And so if I had 4 or 5 essays like that, that's already a workbook. And so I'll show it to Coach Fight a week and a half from now and see what he thinks, and maybe give it to a few of the coaches in Detroit, and then maybe forward it to the man Sunil Wardamantri in New York, who I mentioned in the article that authored the Demystifying Chess Teachers Program. Um, but yeah, that I have actual. So it's not just like, oh, I have an essay, I'm thinking about it. Like I actually have a plan who I could give it to, and if it worked out well, it could conceivably, if I gave it to Sunil and he liked it, it could possibly get in front of hundreds or thousands of people. And if we work together, if I give it to Sunil and he edit it, he's already has hundreds, to thousands of chess coaches working under him in his program. So that's why I thought it'd be possibly more productive than like, okay, like you're writing, it might be successful, but you don't necessarily have an immediate audience. So that's why I was
I
thinking of
do.
chess.
They just don't know that they want to read my book yet.
Well, yeah, I mean to discourage you. I just meant something factual. That's why I'm writing the chess in the type way, where I'm writing something that has immediate audience, that has something that I have. I'm even mentioning, like like Sunil, that if I gave this to Sunil and he liked it, he could immediately put it in front of hundreds of people that could put it to immediate use. So that's why I thought maybe to focus on that. That might be more productive than the other type things. Like I'm still doing a lot of research on Descartes and science or something like that, but it's unclear who I'm going to give it to or who's going to read it, even though that topic interests me maybe more than the chess. In this paper, I will explore the fundamental differences between the Western philosophical understanding of consciousness and my own philosophy. While Western philosophy has traditionally understood consciousness as a subjective experience of the individual mind, my philosophy places consciousness at the center of physical reality. To begin, I will provide a brief overview of the traditional Western philosophical view of consciousness. I will then introduce my own philosophy, which is rooted in Eastern traditions of Advaita Vedanta, Ayurveda, and yoga. I explain how my philosophy differs from the Western perspective and how it offers a unique and more comprehensive understanding of consciousness. This understanding can have implications for a wide range of fields, including philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and physics. Ultimately, by challenging traditional Western views on consciousness, we can open up new avenues of inquiry and pave the way for more holistic and integrated understanding of the world around us. Part two: Western philosophy's understanding of consciousness. Western philosophy has a long history of attempting to understand consciousness, with various theories proposed throughout the centuries. However, there are few dominant perspectives that have been particularly influential in shaping the Western philosophical tradition. One such perspective is the dualist view, which holds that consciousness is separate from the physical body and can exist independently. This view was famously championed by philosopher Rene Descartes, who posited that the mind and body are distinct substances. According to Descartes, consciousness is a non physical, immaterial substance that interacts with the physical body. Another influential perspective is the materialist view, which holds that consciousness is reducible to the physical processes of the brain. This view is based on the idea that all mental states can ultimately be explained in terms of physical processes such as the firing of neurons in the brain. Proponents of this view argue that consciousness is an emergent property of the brain arising from the complex interaction between neurons. Third perspective is the functionalist view, which holds that consciousness is not tied to any particular substance or process, but rather is a matter of functional organization. Actually, according to this view, consciousness is a property of any system that can perform the functions associated with conscious experience, regardless of the underlying physical substrate. Overall, Western philosophy's understanding of consciousness has been shaped by these and other perspectives, with ongoing debates about the nature of consciousness and how it relates to the physical world. In contrast, my philosophy takes a fundamentally different approach to understanding consciousness. Consciousness is the sole universal process and consists of the reduction of a quantum state upon observation of the eigenstate. Implications and consequences. The process relational understanding of consciousness in my philosophy has significant implications for our understanding of the nature of reality and the implications for human experience. One significant consequence of this perspective is that it challenges the dualistic view of mind and matter that has been prevalent in Western philosophy by emphasizing interdependence. This perspective understands all boundaries to be impermanent and thus able to be modeled using only the construct of the fuzzy boundary, which will be explored in detail at a later time. Another implication of this perspective is that it challenges the assumption that the material world is a fixed structure that can be studied and understood objectively. In my system, observation is central. Consciousness is the sole process. This challenges the objectivity of science and intrinsic substantial identity. Our experience of reality is not simply a passive reflection of the world around us, but an active and co creative process. This defined notion, so I noticed as I read it that there's some sort of mistake there. This defined notions, and then it goes on to something else. So let's continue. In addition, my philosophical system is derived from non-dualist soteriology that teaches that the ultimate goal of human existence is not material success, but rather spiritual liberation and transcendence. By emphasizing the importance of the cessation of grasping attachments, greater success in perceiving material consciousness is achieved. Overall, my philosophy of consciousness has far reaching implications for our understanding of reality, science, human experience, and the nature of existence itself. By challenging the dualistic view of mind and matter and highlighting the role of observation, it offers a radical new perspective on the nature of reality and personalism. Part four, implications and significance of the differences. The differences between Western philosophy and this philosophy have significant implications for understanding the nature of consciousness and the physical world. Here are some of the potential implications. Shift in focus. Western philosophy often focuses on the individual and their subjective experience. In contrast, this philosophy focuses on the interconnectedness of all things and the absolute consciousness that underlies it all. This shift in focus has implications on how we understand the nature of reality and our place within it. Rejection of dualism. Western philosophy often posits a dualism between mind and body, subject and object. This philosophy rejects this dualism and instead emphasizes the inseparability of consciousness and matter. This rejection of dualism has implications for how we understand the mind body problem, the nature of consciousness. New model for physics reality. This philosophy offers a new model for physical reality that does not rely on particles or fixed boundaries. Instead, physical reality is seen as a process of matter interacting with itself with fuzzy boundaries that exist in a hierarchy array hierarchical array based on their expected lifetime. This model has implications for how we understand the nature of matter and the mind, uh, soteriological origin. This philosophy has soteriological origin. This shift in focus has implications for how we understand the purpose and meaning of life. Importance of consciousness. This philosophy places consciousness at the center of physical reality as the sole process that mediates all observations. This has implications for how we understand the relationship between subjective experience and objective reality. In conclusion, the difference between this philosophy and Western philosophy has significant implications for how we understand the nature of consciousness, the physical world, and our place within it by shifting the focus from the individual to the interconnectedness of all things, rejecting dualism, offering a new model for physical reality, emphasizing sociological goals, and placing consciousness at the center of physical reality. This philosophy offers a unique perspective on existence that challenges traditional Western thought. Conclusion. The understanding of consciousness is absolute and primary has significant implications and applications in various fields, including science, ethics, and spirituality. In science, the traditional reductionist approach that separates the observer from the observed has limited our understanding of the universe. By recognizing consciousness as the fundamental aspect of reality, we can develop new models as theories that take into account the role of the observer in shaping reality. This approach has already shown promising results in areas such as quantum mechanics and neuroscience. In ethics, the reaction of consciousness as absolute and primary has significant implications for how we treat other beings and the environment. By acknowledging that all beings possess consciousness and are interconnected, we can develop a more compassionate and sustainable approach to life. In spirituality, the understanding of consciousness as absolute and primary aligns with the teachings of various traditions such as Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism. It provides a framework for realizing the true nature of the self and the universe and for attaining spiritual liberation and enlightenment. Moreover, the understanding of consciousness as absolute and primary can have practical applications in fields such as education, psychology, and healthcare. By recognizing the role of consciousness in shaping our experiences and perceptions, we can develop new approaches of learning, healing, and personal growth. In conclusion, the recognition of consciousness as absolute and primary has profound implications and applications in various fields. By embracing this understanding, we can develop a more holistic and integrated approach to life and realize our full potential as conscious beings.
Thanks.
Well, pretty
What
good.
what do you think? Really? Sweet.
Well, um, maybe. I mean, it definitely needs. I think in my term, you might um, define sociology just quickly, because it's a complicated word. Your branch of theology dealing with the study of salvation.
Just in
Um,
terms of the concepts, though, like I know a problem that there's been with my writing is that it's like hard to understand. Is it at least a
well,
little bit easier to understand?
no. I mean, yeah, I mean it's better, but no, it's not yet a complete essay. It's not quite proper paragraph form. It has sections and a little bit of like a more flow, but it falls into points of lists that are repetitive. That if you put in proper paragraph form, you could probably delete the repetitive part or give a clear roadmap. So it's like my essay, I think, is a complete essay. It's in proper essay form. It meets all the qualifications of an essay, but still needs editing. Your essay still needs more editing just to get into proper essay format. Then possibly more editing, but it's almost there. But like no, I mean I'd say like it's not quite in proper essay format, but it's much closer than your other stuff. I mean, you could probably put this on your blog, and you might get hits or interaction from your blog, but it's not publishable yet because it's still not in proper paragraph form. you can see it's just kind of like list here at the end. It's like sentence, like it's not
Well, the
paragraph.
thing is that this took me, the reason I'm feeling so positive is that this actually only took, I want to say, less than 24 hours because I spent a long time training the AI. And I just want to make that clear. Like, it seems based on, because like when I was first using
I'll be back in a
ChatGPT, it
minute. So
would
you just keep
eventually
on
crash.
talking. I'll be back in a minute or two.
Sure.
I'm
It would
listening.
eventually crash. Yeah, that's cool. It would eventually crash. Like anyone who's tried ChatGPT, I'm sure you've seen the thing. It's crashed in more than one way. But anyway, it used to crash in a given thread because you just have a thread. You want to talk about something different, you change into a different thread. That's how it works on ChatGPT. And the idea is within a given thread, it'll remember what you've said to an extent. Like it sort of has like a baseline structure it can't deviate from, which is a neighborhood of acceptable sort of responses. But then it has an evolving amount. It appears to be degree to which it can adapt to what I've already said to it. So I spent a good, like, probably 2 hours minimum just putting in some info, my own notes, saying, summarize this, and then saying, okay, that's right, that's wrong, do it again. And then sort of basically just go on rants to try to brute force some type of a profile as to like, this is actually the context, the relevant context. Because, kind of go back to like, well, words and such, the more abstract words that you're going to use in a text, it's very easy for them to sort of have bigger scopes of relevance context, because that's kind of a good definition for abstract is like, well, it's the thing that's everywhere, but you can't define it because it's everywhere, like take time, for example. Anyway, I was going to go off on and explaining the ether field, so based on what people were talking about in the chat, but you're back already, so we can go back to what we were saying.
Yeah, if you want to stay, I might sign off in a little bit if you want to ramble to the chat afterwards, but there's definitely a few points on your essay besides the editing and the format. So one is,
my point is that it only took 24 hours, and normally it takes way longer, and they're way worse than this. So that was sort of all that to say. A lot of improvement, even though it's not quite like there yet by any stretch.
Yeah, so my first comments were only on the essay format, not on the substance. So if you want to give a few comments on the substance, so you don't mention, you use the term Western philosophy, but really you only talk about Cartesian dualism, and you don't mention the other important Western philosophy, which is the Aristotelian hylomorphism. And so, I mean, one thing you'd be more clear. So if you're only going to talk about Cartesian dualism, maybe you should just call it Cartesian dualism, not Western philosophy, because Western philosophy implies the long shadow of the Greeks. And as I mentioned on the past week in review, that Descartes shifts from Aristotelian dualism of hylomorphism to mind-body dualism. And I don't know if you remember, how I explained that, or if you have an understanding of what hylomorphism and how Descartes switched Greek dualism to modern substance dualism that led to the possibility of eliminativism.
We've been discussing this topic for quite some time, haven't we?
Well, do you want me to say, or do you want me to test? Do you want to say, your memory of hylomorphism and Aristotelian dualism versus
I'll freely
Cartesian
admit
dualism?
I don't know the difference. Yeah, I'm not pretending to know the difference. But if you'd like to go into it, that would be great.
Well, I'm just saying that hylomorphism, Aristotelian dualism was matter and form, as opposed to mind and body. And Aristotelian consciousness is unclear when you say, like, from the Galilean perspective, Galileo is the one that turns consciousness into something subjective. In Aristotelian dualism, that's unclear. And then you're thinking like Platonic forms, where the dualism is matter and form. And so you could interpret Greek hylomorphism where forms are consciousness in a panpsychic manner. To say consciousness is not, and we've discussed this many times in terms of Platonism, where consciousness is not the subjective creation of mind, but consciousness is actually the forms, and the forms don't exist in the mind. The forms are the universal forms, and that's the dualism of hylomorphism, which is just Greek for form and matter. And so Descartes unified hylomorphism. So it used to be the dualism was between form and matter, and Descartes unified so that Descartes' material now included form and matter, and that's his unification of geometry and algebra, and then created mind as the other substance, like so they call like substance dualism, Cartesian substance dualism, where you have two substances of mind and matter. But that's in direct opposition to the Aristotelian hylomorphism, where form, where matter, where the dualism is between form and matter. And it's possible that the Aristotelian hylomorphism is in line with the Vedic Advaita philosophy, and in the sense that it's not subjective, that forms are not subjective parts of the mind. And if you call forms consciousness, Aristotle does not call forms consciousness. Plato does not call the forms consciousness. But if you understood the forms to be consciousness, and that the forms are not a product of the mind, however, if the forms, do you understand what I'm saying? That if you consider the forms consciousness, it's possibly that the Greek hylomorphism dualism is not in contradiction to Advaita philosophy in the same way that Cartesian dualism is.
Yeah, it could be contradictory to it in a completely different way. Luckily, contradictions aren't meaningful in my system, but hey.
Well, I didn't even mean the word contradictory, but
I was just making a silly joke. It was not meant to be serious, but absolutely it would be. I don't fully understand this. I haven't researched this enough to like know it in and out, and I can't say the extent to which I disagree with it the way I can with Cartesian dualism, I guess.
Well, so I'm saying you use the term the Western tradition. The Western tradition generally is called the Western tradition because it starts with the Greeks and Plato and Aristotle. But you don't really talk about that. And Descartes is more the beginning of the Enlightenment. So I don't think it's correct terminology. If you're just talking about Descartes, it's not really the Western tradition, it's the Enlightenment.
Well, I feel like
Within
since
the
so
Western
much of what I'm
tradition,
teaching is logic and metaphysics, that me disagreeing with the laws of logic should be mentioned, but it didn't come up in this essay just because I didn't like alter it in any way. I just had ChatGPT put what it wanted, and it didn't include that.
well, so I mean, like if it was just for your blog, you could put it there. But I think it's, I don't know, inaccurate's too strong of a word, but when you're using the term Western tradition, but really you're only talking about the Enlightenment. And if you use the term the Western tradition, you should really talk about the Greeks and hylomorphism, because the Western tradition is not
Can't I
monolithic.
just talk about the laws of logic? I'm not trying to write a treatise on all of Western philosophy. I'm trying to say, here's my panpsychist philosophy.
You're the one who used the term the Western tradition.
I
So
think
I'm
maybe
saying
put
from
Western
editing,
philosophy, not tradition.
well, whatever, you're the one who used that term. So I'm saying that's problematic because you don't really talk about the Western tradition. You just talk about the Enlightenment. And if you don't want to talk about hylomorphism, you don't have to talk about hylomorphism. But if you're going to use the term the Western tradition and then only talk about Descartes without talking about Aristotle and hylomorphism, it's not really the Western tradition. It's just in the Enlightenment.
Cool. Yeah.
So that's just one point that
That's
seemed
probably better.
you
Except
know.
that the whole laws of logic thing go back to Aristotle.
Well,
And
I didn't
that's
talk about logic. I was just
pretty
talking about
central to my thing.
dualism. You talked about dualism, and Descartes is not monolithic in the Western tradition, and Descartes is specific. Usually in the Western tradition, they have a dividing line of the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment is the shift away from the Greeks on certain of these manners to a new way of looking at things, and that includes the unification of Aristotelian dualism into materialism and the separation of the mind body dualism as opposed to hylomorphic dualism. And then you're claiming that there's this big divide between East and West, but there's a big divide between Descartes and Eastern Advaita. There may not be the same big divide between Aristotelian hylomorphism and Advaita. So you don't have to talk about that, but it just seemed misleading the way you write that because you use the terminology of the Western tradition as opposed to Descartes. And maybe it
Yeah.
was me, like I think Descartes, I actually was like his dualism has largely been rejected. I was referring to the significance of Descartes in relationship to science. And that's actually, the science, it's the rejection of hylomorphism that leads to Descartes being the pivotal founder of modern science, of the concept of having universal scientific laws where you no longer have a separation between form and matter. They're considered one entity, form and matter, one of the same thing. And that's how it's possible to have universal scientific laws.
I guess
And
it's
so,
really hard for me to see what the difference is between matter and immaterial form versus matter and immaterial substance dualism.
well,
I don't see a difference.
I think your essay is fundamentally incorrect in that manner that Descartes' philosophy, including dualism, has almost been completely rejected. Almost no one is a Cartesian philosopher.
Most everybody espouses substance dualism not because of a philosopher, but because of just consciousness itself.
Very few people espouse substance dualism. Doovid is from the few people who espouse substance dualism.
Substance dualism is the intuitive appearance. Everybody, before they actually look at it, believes in some form of substance dualism, i.e., there's a substance called the soul that is not the body.
Well, I mean, you're not listening to T Jump. I'm saying no, I mean, no. These days, within the Royal Society, within Western science,
He wouldn't deny cogito.
very
He
few
wouldn't deny
people.
cogito, okay, and that's what I'm pointing at.
Yeah, but they deny substance dualism. They would be in the materialist.
Cogito to me is substance dualism because cogito is a substance to which is dual to matter, which has no empirical basis in matter, and people believe that it has substantial properties. That's just how it is. It's how consciousness feels.
It's not how it is. It's saying that
They can't articulate that position, but if you ask them questions, you'll find that their answers accord with more or less something like substance dualism.
you might argue that, but the majority position in the academy is materialism. Substance dualism has largely been completely rejected in the modern West.
Okay, materialism's not coherent, self-refuting because it's a metaphysical thesis. So in its own worldview, any theory about it is not real.
No, emergent materialism is the majority position in the West today. So I don't know what, I mean, you're just arguing over nothing. You're going to claim that Cartesian dualism is the modern perspective in the West is just inaccurate because
I didn't say it's the modern perspective in the West. It's the naturally arising perception, the untrained perception can be described as substance dualism.
You can make some sort of argument, but it's not.
Why do so many people believe in all these, Platonic realms? That's substance dualism. That's saying there's Platonic stuff outside of this coming into reality.
No. You just didn't hear anything I said. Like, no, you are completely wrong. Platonic forms is hylomorphism. It is not substance dualism. What did you not understand what I just opened up with? If you're talking about Platonic forms, you're not a Cartesian dualist. You're still within the ancient Greek hylomorphic dualism. That is a different form of dualism.
Doooovid doesn't understand that I'm talking about people's impressions to themselves, not their stated beliefs. Because obviously, if I don't think language conveys meaning, if I don't think language conveys meaning, then I don't think people can self-diagnose their opinions correctly, right? I mean, I think maybe they can, but not necessarily. So here's where I'm sort of broad brushing this substance dualism. I'm sort of saying, like, what's really the difference between your old school hylomorphic view and your newer Cartesian dualism and finally materialism, which is overrooting, but we'll leave that to the side for now, which are all basically just continuations of the same idea. Matter plus form, matter plus indeterminate form, just matter. That to me is the progression of a single idea towards a simpler form, I suppose, in each progression.
Well, possibly, but it's still. I mean, it's a nonsensical or an inaccurate or a minority view of Western philosophy. So, it just seems poor writing because it's poor.
I'm not talking about writing. I'm talking about my own opinions. Like, it's kind of hard to deviate too far from how I see things.
What I mean, the writing, it's a poor understanding.
This stuff is really circular.
It's a poor understanding of Western philosophy or Western history. And so clearly today, although you could say influenced or historically progression from very few people in the West today are still Cartesian dualists, especially in science. Within people who study science and philosophy, you could say from religious people like Christians might relatively be Cartesian dualist. However, within science and philosophy, very few people are still Cartesian dualists. And in science, almost no one is still a Cartesian dualist. So I don't know if
scientists don't tend to profess metaphysical views, though. So your framing is a bit deceiving.
They do profess metaphysical views, and
no, they don't.
Among scientists,
they're taught to not express metaphysical views. So them expressing metaphysical views is incidental and irrelevant to their training. Counterintuitive to their training, because I went through that training, and we are specifically told not to think about that stuff.
Yeah, but I'm saying metaphysical views are beyond the purview of science that we discussed, by saying that of the metaphysical views of modern science,